come from a company that's being censored.
That's what we're
Welcome back to the
here.
Convo Couch, everyone. I am Pasta Jardula.
And I am Fiorella.
And Jonathan Sue is on the ones and twos. That's not fair. Johnny Sue on the ones and twos. Jindo, Malik Carey, Saul Contra.
You almost sounded like AOC in that beginning. See, that's why I don't like it when you do that, because you sound, kind of fake. Like AOC sounds all the time. So I don't want you to sound like her.
Well, her name is A.O. Sizzle.
We need to worry about our solidarity with one another, Pasta.
That's a very privileged point of view, Fiorella.
No,
Trey
no.
Wright came right in, says, can't watch now. I will later. Love you all. Left some Super Ray love.
Thank you, Trey.
Thank you, Trey.
Okay. Well, so
yeah.
fam.
So
Stop. So I just wanted to say something. There's a lot of people that are going through stuff right now. It's crazy times. So if you do need to take a mental health break from social media, from whatever, YouTube, whatever it is you're doing, it's absolutely acceptable, and you shouldn't have to apologize for it. I mean, a lot of these people online can be so toxic. I just wonder, especially after seeing all this Glenn Greenwald drama that we're going to talk about. Just like, it might get to some people, and that's totally okay. Like, you have every right to step away, and you can come and watch us when you're better. We always have to be kind of on for the most part, because there's so many things happening right now. There's people think like, oh, it's quiet, it's not election season. Screw that. No. There's so much happening regarding the fascist police state we live in. We really are living in that, and a lot of people think that's an exaggeration, but it's not, because it's very cryptic. And by the time you realize it, you're going to be the frog that's already boiled instead of jumping out. You're going to be the boiled frog, and none of us want to be boiled frogs, which is why we do this show, because we want to warn you about all the stuff that's happening. It's just we run out of time with so many things going on and on and on. And
do we need to get a shirt?
Huh?
Do we need to get a shirt?
A shirt.
Don't be a boiled frog.
I want to get the one that says I'm 66% Southern Italian and make everybody else wear it but you. That's the main one. Or I'm a civil liberties guy. That one. We're going to put that one out.
On both of those. Ditto. On both of those.
But everybody's going to wear it. Pasta's not going to wear it. That's the joke. But another thing I wanted to say was we released the video that Johnny so graciously edited with Black Lives Matter 757. We got a lot of positive responses on Rokfin, especially from the usual suspects. They don't really count.
The Black and Brown Alliance.
It's
fam.
Red and brown.
Red and brown.
Brown.
I can't even get fucking basic colors right. Jesus Christ.
So there's an actual blue brown alliance happening.
Ooh.
It's this, or
behind the scenes, the
blue MAGA and and the Nazis, they all agree on these things like war, and they're on the neocons. So it's kind of funny these people say that for simply interviewing Magnus. I mean, we got so much crap just for interviewing the guy. We started getting a lot of crap when we started criticizing Bernie. If we're going to go all the way back, when we started criticizing AOC, we were one of the first people, and so is Niko, to start talking about AOC and exposing AOC. We started getting a lot of crap there. Once we did the election, it was like, oh my God. And then once we started interviewing Magnus, and then subsequently started saying, hey, maybe we should talk to people we don't agree with and at least get what they say. That doesn't mean that we're going to become best friends and have a barbecue with anybody that is, that is that different in ideology. But it's just like talking to somebody, at least getting your point across, or saying like it's okay to go on Tucker Carlson and talk about, hey, imperialism, or talk about free speech. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Oh my God, all the hate and blah, 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 blah. So we don't go against the grain. People think it's like, oh, you're just trying to go against. No. You're
just being a contrarian.
You're being truthful. That's it. and the truth doesn't always fall into your favorite ideology all the time. Sometimes the truth is not something that you know, it comes from a Republican. Sometimes the truth comes from a Democrat. Sometimes the truth comes from people who don't have a party affiliation, outside perspectives. And so that's what we try to do on the show. So I just wanted to recap so far on the things that have happened. And I have zero problems interviewing people I disagree with. Somebody out there posted a screenshot saying that all last summer I was interviewing Proud Boys. I have never interviewed a Proud Boy. We've interviewed a few Trump supporters, and Pasta more than I, actually. We always sent the white man out to do, you know, talk to the white people. You know what I'm saying? But, you know, Johnny and I are like, hey, you know, we're at this rally.
But you guys were with us. We were all together at the rally. They knew who we were. They, you know, I even heard some woman says, that girl over there is the one who covers the Black Lives Matter rallies over there. I heard her say it, like, literally.
Did you?
Yeah, when we were there, like, and I looked at her and I was like, hey, I'm like, yeah, we're here to talk to people who think differently than us. And she said, okay. So they all came over. We did the interview, you know, and I even asked a very tough question. I said, listen, you, some of you folks here at these particular rallies in the Trump camp say that racism doesn't exist anymore, or at the very least, it's down to a little bit of nothing. But how could you say that when the people of color make up 20% of 20% of the country, of the population of the country, but yet there are 750,000 people of color in jail and only 700,000 white people in jail when there's 50%. So you can't ignore those numbers. Racism still exists. I think it will always exist. We can beat it down as best we can, but we also point out that we believe that coming together in a class war eventually will bring races together a little bit more. It's not going to be the end game, just like crypto is not going to be the end game, fam. There will always be work to do, but we shouldn't get duped into fighting each other just so the elites can run off with all the resources and the money, and that's what they want to do, plain and simple, all the time.
Well, they want a race war, so we don't get a class war. And
Maria Estrada put that on there. She said, "Don't fall for it" on Twitter.
And she's Mexican, you know, BIPOC, like. Black Indigenous person of color. She's literally from the streets. She does a lot of activism here. She can see that. Okay. Yeah. So another thing, we have a video. The video with Reverend Annie Chambers.
That's
still
gonna
coming.
Be the one.
That one's going to be the one that I think it's going to. People are uncomfortable with what we're talking about because we're talking to people you disagree with, and people want to stay in their echo chambers, and you know they have a really hard time placing us, like especially me, like as far as, you know, they can be like, oh, Pasta's a right winger, he's just a white man. They can directly just say that even though it's not true. But with me, it's like, you know, I'm an immigrant, I'm a person of color, blah, blah, blah. So they have a harder time attacking me. So that's why it makes them so mad when I say something that's outside the narrative. And when they hear Reverend Annie Chambers, and when they hear, you know, Black Lives Matter, 757 talking about, you know, working with a Boogaloo boy, or just some members of the community that might be militias, just because they, you know, they're against the status quo, and they're doing well. They go to Breonna Taylor marches. It's not everybody. It's not a monolith. You guys have to understand that then, you know, they get so angry that like it's destroying their narrative. It's cognitive dissonance. So we're going to get a lot of anger and hate, but that's why we do what we do, because we want to like tell the truth regardless of what it gets us. If it gets us censored, if it gets us people who hate us, all these things, like, you know, you're never going to make that many friends by being honest. And John Lennon did say that at one point.
And also Jonny Tsunami said they hate us because they ain't us. So just remember that too as well. Muhammad Afzal jumped in early today. Muhammad, glad to see you're on time for class for a change. We love you, Muhammad. You always give the love. We appreciate it. Trey Wright, he probably dipped out because he's working, but he'll watch us later on. Bulls on Parade, Larry Janney, all hanging out at the Rokfin. We got about 106. Hit the like button, hit the thumbs up, share it. Let's get it out there.
We are being suppressed
like no other. But get on out there. Share the stream, share the Rokfin, share everything you can, and let's just continue to grow the numbers. You people have been amazing through our Patreon, our PayPals. Thank you so much. A lot of people give us money to go and do what we do when we're not doing a live show, so we know that you're watching us, caring for us, and you like what we do. Like we said, Johnny put out the 757 video. We drove 2 hours to Richmond. Everybody slept in the car while the old man drove, but I want to point that out. But we got there. That's what we did.
Glory Jones, he's call him out.
Well, Glory Jones woke up so she can play DJ. We can have fun together on the way back.
Well, because she's a better DJ than the Boomer.
Okay.
Anyway, fam.
Yes, and then on the next day, we went to an hour and 20 minutes the opposite way into Baltimore, and we interviewed Reverend Annie Chambers. It was an amazing interview. I can't wait till it comes out, and you guys get to see it because some of the stuff she said. I thought it was two of the interviews we've had this week. With Mr. McHenry, Keith McHenry, and awesome. Reverend Annie Chambers. I mean, like mind-blowing. You know, people who've been doing work for a long time.
You can learn so much from.
Wow.
It's just like the wisdom just spewed out of their pores.
It was great. It was great. All right, so the first one we're going to talk about the big tech in bed with the Democrats to crush dissent. Yeah. A little Republican sprinkles on there, too, as well, from certain issues. Guys, this was a 5-hour...
Senate hearing.
It was a 5-hour hearing, and it was on the House, I believe.
Oh, House hearing.
I was in the House hearing. So, I mean, it was just, it was really just rinse, repeat, same old bullshit.
Yeah.
It really is scary when you talk about the reasons why I didn't want the Democrats to get back into power. Not that I wanted Donald Trump to have power, but I didn't want the Democrats to get back in power simply for this reason right here is the number one reason, fam. When it comes to a fascist kind of form of censorship, the Democrats want more. Mm-hmm. And like I said to you the other day before we started this, and I came to you and said, fam, let's start a show when we got together. Glenn Greenwald gave me the strength to do so because I would watch a hearing or look at an issue and I'd have a certain opinion. Then I'd read a Glenn Greenwald article and I'm like, wow, great minds think alike. So let me put up his Substack. Wow. I'm just going to read the first 4 paragraphs. I practiced last night so I won't stutter as much because he gives you a macro of what's going on, ladies and gentlemen. And we're not going to go through the whole thing. We can be here for 5 hours if we try to do this. So I broke it down to mainly the subcommittee and the ranking members that we can go over their message and what they're saying because pretty much they all said the same, fam. So, here we go. This is Glenn Greenwald on his Substack. Congress, in a 5-hour hearing, demands tech CEOs censor the intranet, even more aggressively. Over the course of 5 hours plus on Thursday, a House committee, along with 2 subcommittees, badgered 3 tech CEOs, repeatedly demanding that they censor more political content from their platforms and vowing legislative retaliation if they fail to comply. The hearing convened by the House Energy and Commerce Committee's Chair Representative Frank Pallone Jr., not a paisan, and the 2 chairs of its subcommittees, Mike Doyle and Jan Schakowsky, was one of the most stunning displays of growing authoritarian effort in Congress to commandeer the control which these companies wield over political discourse for their own political interest and purposes. Fam, that hits it right on the nose. Mm-hmm. As I noted when I reported last month on the scheduling of this hearing, this was the 3rd time in less than 5 months that the U.S. Congress has summoned the CEOs of social media companies to appear before them with the explicit intent to pressure and coerce them to censor more content from their platforms. The bulk of Thursday's lengthy hearing consisted of the Democratic member after Democratic member next complaining that Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg, Google Apple CEO Sundar Pichai, and Twitter CEO Jack Dorsey have failed in their duties to censor political voices and ideological content that these elected officials regard as adversarial or harmful, accompanied by threats that legislative punishment, including the revocation of Section 230 immunity. It is imminent in order to force compliance. Section 230 is the provision of the 1996 Communications Decency Act that shields internet companies from liability for content posted by their users. So, fam, I just want to talk about that really quick. What they're trying to say is that this whole freaking hearing, they're pushing back against anybody who's putting up any information against vaccines, against COVID.
Right.
Against the election. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They constantly mention these things as they went along. And they're really, I mean, it's really scary and authoritarian. They're saying, well, how can you get all these information about these people putting up vaccines and you're still letting them stand up there?
You can't even mention the COVID on Twitter. It won't let you. And it will take it down on Facebook too and all these other platforms. So it's really scary because even if the information you were putting out there on COVID was false, you should have the ability to publish it, because who decides what is false and what isn't? It shouldn't be big tech. And that's the whole premise of this thing. It should not be big tech, and it shouldn't be politicians influenced by big tech or big tech influenced by politicians, that adulterous relationship that they have now, right? It is really scary, especially when you combine money and politics and political influence. When it comes to these decisions, it's definitely more about that, is the certain political narrative they have to push, rather than the actual right and wrong, truth and false and justice. They're not doing it to protect people. They don't care about protecting people. Hello, look at what's going on. They're just using that as the excuse to say that, oh, this is misinformation, in order to get away with only allowing their state narrative, because allowing any sort of questioning of the state narrative would begin questioning the empire, its intentions, and it would just expose to people the fact that we are entering into a very, very fascist type of system, where it is like Orwellian. I mean, you can read 1984 and look what's happening now and see the similarities are so vast. And it's not an exaggeration, because we're going to continue talking today. Today's a show about civil liberties. It's a show about, censorship and free speech, and how that's coming under attack, not just in the United States, but like in Europe specifically too. Yeah. The West is losing the battle. It's losing control. The empire is falling. Yeah. If you really want to get deep, UK is the grandfather, right, of the United States. It's like our big daddy, right? Yeah. And so they have very similar policies, and they have very similar issues, and people are questioning very similar things, and we're going to show those parallels. But yeah, 100%, fam.
Before I read this next part, I got a question for the both of you guys, because we've been on both sides of this kind of, we're very independent thinkers, and, I guess we don't necessarily pick sides or pick teams, you know what I'm saying? We pick what we feel is right or wrong, and that we go with that. But the arguing fact is that you have people who, there's a lot of, and it's kind of funny because I was thinking about this yesterday, there's a lot of Trump supporters who don't necessarily agree with his whole mentality when it comes to vaccines. Like, Trump was like, warp speed, we should get all the credit. And there's a lot of Trump people like, I ain't taking no vaccine. I know anomalies like Donald Trump can have my vaccine in his other arm, whatever, and stuff like that. There's a lot of people out there saying it's not FDA approved. You all are just the guinea pigs. Don't do it. And then we have people that we know, activists on the left, who have been out there like, you got to take this and go take your picture when you take it, because this is not just about your life. This is about everybody around you, and it can kill people. So how do you fight back against those narratives? I mean, to me, at the end of the day, I still think it should be a personal choice whether you want to get this vaccine or not.
I
Your thoughts?
I agree. I mean, I think it should be a personal choice, because there's not data. First of all, none of them are FDA approved. Not that the FDA is, a beacon of all greatness, right? But they're not even approved by the very simplistic FDA. Two, it's a rush vaccine. Yes, they've been working on the sequence before, because coronaviruses have happened before. It's very similar to SARS, the vaccine itself. The virus itself is very similar to SARS, so they didn't really have to do too much tweaking to do it. So technically, they've been working on it for a while, but it is not like it's not like COVID is polio, and that's the normal the go-to comparison. It's like, well, the polio vaccine. Imagine if you didn't vaccinate against polio. If you didn't vaccinate against polio, you would get sick and become an invalid and disabled and die. Like, that's not what happens when you get COVID. We've had COVID. It's not fun. It's nasty. It's definitely a real virus. Having said that, to say you need a shot, a vaccine, by demand and making it mandatory is a little much. There are certain things I think that you do need to stop certain diseases. This is not one of them. That's why I'm not an anti-vaxxer, because I do think in some instances when you're a child, getting some vaccines is okay. They've doubled and tripled the amount of vaccines children get now, which is, I think it's a problem. And I think you can be very nuanced in this conversation, but some people don't want to have a nuanced conversation. Yeah, and they would have already called me an anti-vaxxer by what I just said. Or some people are like, well, I don't want any vaccines. And I'm like, okay, well, then that could be debated, right? That could be debated. But to make mandatory vaccinations and mandatory passports, Rutgers University is requiring the students who want to return to campus to get the vaccine and have proof of the vaccine, which is crazy. That's ridiculous. You You shouldn't have to do that. Also, you need to build immunity. You know, there's a lot of people using all these sanitizers and all this stuff. Well, your body needs to build immunity to fight these viruses. Otherwise, we're going to be sick of everything. So it's all these things coming into play. You should be able to have a conversation about it.
That's the problem, though.
You shouldn't just be like, oh, that's it. We're not going to talk about it.
That's the problem. We haven't been able to talk about it. We haven't been able to talk about ivermectin and all these other forms that are like a lot, different treatments than the actual vaccine that don't cost a lot of money, that it seems that like big pharma and big tech kind of censored, so we can't have those discussions. And that's the sick thing, because they've actually threw gasoline on the fires of those people who are complete anti-vaxxers, and like, then why are they silencing our voices?
Right.
Why can't we talk about other forms of treatment and stuff? So, Johnny, do you have an opinion on that, or? Okay, so the Democrats, once again, one after the other, saying you're not, and really, to tell you the truth, the disgusting point was not just the vaccine stuff that they're saying you're not taking down, the political discourse that they're saying that you should take down. So let me read the next two paragraphs really quick, because it really sums up what happens in this whole thing. Republican members largely confined their grievance to the opposite concern, that these social media giants were excessively silencing conservative voices in order to promote a liberal political agenda. That complaint is only partially true. A good amount of online censorship, like growing law enforcement, domestic monitoring generally, focuses on all anti-establishment ideologies, not just the right-wing variant. I want to point that out, because that is so true, because as all these people are talking in this hearing, nobody's representing us. Nobody's representing the Convo Couch. It's always the conservative voices they're silencing and stuff like that. Well, we ain't conservative voices, and we're getting fucking moderated left and right, okay? So I'm glad that Glenn kind of pointed out, because it's all anti-establishment ideologies. That's what they're trying to shut down. This editorial censoring, many Republicans insisted, rendered the tech company's Section 230 immunity obsolete, since they are now acting as publishers rather than mere neutral transmitters of information. Some Republicans did join with Democrats in demanding greater censorship, though typically in the name of protecting children from mental health disorders and predators rather than ideological conformity, which is something that's very weird, fam, because like they were making some points, like we were talking, some of these Republicans were making some great points, and they immediately had jumped to these kind of weird, bizarre situations where they were blaming big tech for what I thought a lot had to do with parenting. Like, we know what conservatives always like it's about the home, it's about parenting. It's like, well, I have a friend who's got a daughter, and she's like, okay, put the iPad up. It's 8 o'clock. No more iPad. She's monitoring how often she's on the internet, making sure that she goes outside, does playtime without the without the internet and stuff like that. And that's something that's really, really crazy, because they told some of these weird, bizarre stories in which predators kind of got pictures of a young girl and kind of threatened to show it to her classmates. She ended up killing herself. And I don't know how you can hold Facebook accountable for stuff like that, but it was really, really weird, and I thought it was a deterrent. However, there are kind of systems that kind of get people addicted to social media. So I know they want to talk about the way they keep people addicted and stuff, but they really didn't get into that. They kind of just blamed big tech for children getting hurt. And this is the last one, because this is very important too as well, because we have to make a phone call, fam. I have to call Steve after this, because watch after this paragraph, and I'll explain it right now. As they've done in prior hearings, both Zuckerberg and Papi, and I did say Zuckerberg on purpose, spoke like superscripted, programmed, how do you say that words? Automatons that are eager to please their congressional overseers, though they did periodically issue what should have been unnecessary warnings that excessive content moderation can cripple free political discourse. Dorsey, by contrast, seemed at the end of his line of patience and tolerance for vapid, moronic censorship demands, and sitting in the kitchen in front of a pile of plates and glasses, he refreshingly barely bothered to hide that indifference. At one point, he flatly stated in response to demands that Twitter do more to remove disinformation, "I don't think we should be the arbitrators of truth, and I don't think the government should be either." And really, to tell you the truth, it was kind of, and that's the last paragraph I'm going to read from there. We'll look at some of the footage. And really, fam, it was kind of interesting, because I felt like Dorsey just had enough. Like, and I don't know what Dorsey's position he's in, and I want to get a little bit more about where he comes from and what he is, because he didn't seem like he was doing kabuki theater this time. He wasn't like Zuckerberg and Papi that was saying what they had to do to please their Democratic colleagues. He was just like, enough with this free speech and shit like that. Let's enough. So let's take a look real quick at the footage. We'll start off with Mark Zuckerberg, and we'll show just the differences, and then we'll show a little clip of Dorsey as well. So here's Mark Zuckerberg in his opening statements.
Content that could lead to imminent real-world harm. We've built an unprecedented third-party fact-checking program, and if something is rated false, then we add warning labels and significantly reduce its distribution. We invest a lot in directing billions of people to authoritative information. The system isn't perfect, but it's the best approach that we've found to address misinformation in line with our country's values. It's not possible to catch every piece of harmful content without infringing on people's freedoms in a way that I don't think that we'd be comfortable with as a society. Our approach was tested in 2020 when we took extraordinary steps during an extraordinary election. We removed voting misinformation, banned hundreds of militias and conspiracy networks, including QAnon, labeled posts that prematurely or wrongly declared victory, and directed people to official results. We labeled over 180 million posts. We directed 140 million people to our official voting information center, and we helped 4.5 million people register to vote. We did our part to secure the integrity of the election. And then, on January 6th, President Trump gave a speech rejecting the results and calling on people to fight. The attack on the Capitol was an outrage, and I want to express my sympathy to all of the members, staff, and Capitol workers who had to live through this disgraceful moment in our history. And I want to express my gratitude to the Capitol Police who were on the front lines in defense of our democracy. Now, I believe that the former president should be responsible for his words, and that the people who broke the law should be responsible for their actions. So that leaves the question of the broader information ecosystem. And I can't speak for everyone else, the TV channels, radio stations, news outlets, websites, and other apps, but I can tell you what we did. Before January 6th, we worked with law enforcement to identify and address threats. During and after the attack, we provided extensive support in identifying the insurrectionists and removed posts supporting violence. We didn't catch everything, but we made our services inhospitable to those who might do harm. And when we feared that he would incite further violence, we suspended the former president's account.
All right.
Now, many people are concerned.
Bam.
Wow.
Do you want to give your thoughts on?
How does a boot taste, Mark?
Wow.
That's what I want to know. He just put that boot so far down his throat. Yep. Like, Jesus Christ, that's just terrible. Like, oh God.
Yeah, we want to censor and take down misinformation. We help fix the
keyword.
Election.
Yeah.
It's just bullshit.
The integrity of the elections.
He just manufactures consent for doing what he did, and it's wrong what he did. It's just terrible. I mean, this guy also, too, we helped secure all the things he was doing, once again, are technically illegal.
He gloated how he censored people, how he marks people, how all these things. I got a warning on my Facebook recently. I don't even know because I said, here, this is funny. I said, ding dong, the witch is dead. Which wicked witch? And I said, I said, Neera Tanden. Ha ha ha. Like, it was like a joke. And literally like a month later, your profile is a warning and it will be restricted if you commit any one more atrocious thing. It's just like, oh my God, like it was ridiculous. And that's just one aspect, but it gets more ridiculous. Facebook is being like fascist book. That's what people call it now.
Yeah. And he can't make it more obvious that he is in line with the establishment Democrats that hate Donald Trump, and what he did was okay. He justified censoring people. He justified tipping the scales for Joe Biden. Oh, we helped all these people sign up and whatnot and everything. Like, yeah, you probably helped Democrats sign up. Did you do that equally for both sides and stuff? We know this from the drop boxes that you did. You put them in all Democratic areas. So, I mean, he pretty much just admitted that he helped freaking, tip the scales for Joe Biden. And he also justified the fascist censorship of shutting down Donald Trump by saying he said he was going to fight. Like, how many of our politicians says, we got to fight, we got to stand up, fight back, whatnot? Did you censor Bernie Sanders when he said, stand up, fight back, and work and make a government that works for all of us? He used the word fight.
Or a revolution.
Or, yeah, I mean, all that stuff.
Ready for a revolution.
So, once again, justifying his disgusting ways and showing what's going on. Now, this part of Jack Dorsey that I clipped up is because this is something that's really, really kind of interesting, because he talks about an open source, transparent content moderation kind of thing. Like, you know how Dickface Zuckerberg was saying, we have a third party that's going to come in there and decide what's going on. Like, no. We don't want a third party. We want you to be transparent across the board. So therefore, if you set a precedent and you take one person down and you say specifically why you take them down and you have to do that, then you set a precedent and you can't do that against somebody else. You know what I'm saying? You have to be equal. You have to act as a platform. But look what Jack Dorsey talks about, because Jack Dorsey was at the end of his rope, and you see that, Johnny, over his right shoulder or his right arm over there, there's that little clocky thing down over there right below the window. That's something to do with Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's a Bitcoin clock. It's a blockchain clock.
Yes.
Block clock or something.
It's a block clock. But here's Jack Dorsey.
Not be able to compete, and all activity would be centralized into very few businesses. So how do we resolve these two viewpoints? One way is to create shared protocols. Social media has proven itself important enough to be worthy of an internet protocol, one that a company like Twitter can contribute to and compete on creating experiences people love to use. We've started work on such a protocol, which we call Blue Sky. It intends to act as a decentralized, open source social media protocol, not owned by any single company or organization. Any developer around the world can help develop it, just as any company can access its services. How does an open protocol address the concerns raised here? Greater transparency is the strongest benefit. Anyone around the world can see everything that's happening in the network, including exactly how it works. One doesn't have to trust a company, just look at the source code. Second, since the base protocol is shared, it will increase innovation around business models, recommendation algorithms, and moderation controls, which are in the hands of individuals rather than private companies. This will allow people to experiment in a market-based approach. Finally, it will allow all of us to observe, acknowledge, and address any societal issues that arise much faster. Having more eyes on the problems will lead to more impactful solutions that can be built directly into this protocol, making the network far more secure and resilient. A decentralized open source protocol for social media is our vision and work for the long term. We continue the cycle mentioned earlier of constantly improving our approach to content moderation in the short term. I hope our discussion today will focus on more enduring solutions.
All right. So, fam, I don't know about you, but that was kind of juicy. That was kind of cool. I don't know if we could trust this dude, what's going on. But he said, he's at the end of his rope. He's done going to Congress, being a ping pong ball, going back and forth with the Democrats who want to censor more, for the Republicans that want to censor different things or don't want you to censor and stuff like that. You know, he took it on the chin for the whole friggin' New York Post Hunter Biden story. But he's talking about an open source a kind of protocol moderation where everybody can see it, and therefore kind of leveling the playing fields out, making it more transparent.
We'll see, because they still suspended Trump's account.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so I have distrust in billionaires who have a lot of power, like Jack Dorsey. I do think he's definitely not on the same plane as Zuckerberg, from what it seems, but we'll see, because I still think like people should be moderating what they want to see and hear, not anybody else. So transparency would mean, for me, making it a public square, making all these platforms, like nationalizing these platforms, so to speak. So these are capitalists, so they're not gonna do that. Yeah. But I just don't really trust any third party to tell me or moderate or anything like that. Yeah. But it's better.
That's what Zuckerberg wants to do.
It's better than
in the pocket third party that he can tell.
But he's still saying it's going to be an open source moderation. Yeah. But it's still somebody else doing it.
Well, he calls it Blue Sky, right? So it will be just a program where it's open source. Everybody can be transparent about it. They can look at the source code. I mean, it is a move in the right direction. Like I said, I don't know where Dorsey's coming from, or if he's just lost his patience, is at the end of his rope. Because throughout this hearing, there's sometimes he's like, yeah, whatever, almost. In the mentality of saying, like, you'll see coming up. Now, let's go to Representative Mike Doyle. I'm going to only kind of highlight three people because I want to highlight the chairs of the ranking members. Now, Representative Mike Doyle is a Democrat from Pennsylvania. And this particular clip over here, watch how very scary and fascist like he talks about, like Big Brother has to make the decision what's real and what's fake. The phony attempt to act as if the Democrats are really mad at big tech, fam. You see this throughout the whole the whole hearing. Oh, I am so mad at you for what you're doing. Guy, please, they're on your side. He always recalls the events of January 6th, like they're the victims. They sprinkle that in there, and then kind of always harps on the anti-vaccine stuff that's going online, where he doesn't want to have the public square have an open and honest talk about how they really feel about vaccines. So take a look at Representative Mike Doyle right here. This was his opening statements.
I'll recognize himself for 5 minutes. Our nation is drowning in disinformation driven by social media. Platforms that were once used to share photos of kids with grandparents are all too often havens of hate, harassment, and division. The way I see it, there are two faces to each of your platforms. Facebook has family and friends neighborhood, but it is right next to the one where there is a white nationalist rally every day. YouTube is a place where people share quirky videos, but down the street, anti-vaxxers, COVID deniers, QAnon supporters, and flat earthers are sharing videos. Twitter allows you to bring friends and celebrities into your home, but also Holocaust deniers, terrorists, and worse. Now, it would be one thing if every user chose where to go organically, but almost everything is scripted on social media platforms. Facebook recognizes antisocial tendencies in one user and invites them to visit the white nationalist. YouTube sees another user is interested in COVID-19 and auto starts an anti-vax video. On Twitter, a user following the trending conversation, never knowing it is driven by bots and coordinated disinformation networks run by foreign agents. Your platforms have changed how people across the planet communicate, connect, learn, and stay informed. The power of this technology is awesome and terrifying, and each of you has failed to protect your users and the world from the worst consequence of your creations. This is the first time the three of you have appeared before Congress since the deadly attack on the Capitol on January 6th. That event was not just an attack on our democracy and our electoral process, but an attack on every member of this committee and in the Congress. Many of us were on the House floor and in the Capitol when that attack occurred, and we were forced to stop our work of certifying the election and retreat to safety, some of us wearing gas masks and fearing for our lives. We fled as a mob desecrated the Capitol, the House floor, and our democratic process. People died that day, and hundreds were seriously injured. That attack and the movement that motivated started and was nourished on your platforms. Your platform suggested groups for people to join.
All right. So, fam, you see how, once again, how he's kind of like twisting the conversation. You know, what's real, what's fake. You can't listen to this. You can't talk about that. Also acting upset. And then once again, playing the victim of January 6th, fam.
Well, what really disturbed me the most was his attempt to paint every social media platform as a place for entertainment only. So whenever he referred to Facebook, he would say, oh, cats and dogs and, you know, family stuff.
Yeah.
When he's talked about Twitter, you can bring a celebrity in your home. When he talked about YouTube, he talked about quirky videos. So there's no way people should ever be educated into any sort of deep subject or challenge their intellect in any of these platforms. It's only for entertainment for you plebs. You plebs aren't worthy of knowing what is something that is an intellectual, factual thing or something that you could learn from. No. We don't want you to learn. We want you guys to just be entertained by cat videos and dog videos and quirky, dumb videos on YouTube, which, by the way, you know, don't threaten the state narrative in any way, shape, or form. Don't threaten me. Don't threaten how corrupt I am and the type of mentality that I have. So of course I'm gonna be advocating that we go back to only sharing stupid, vapid, superficial information and not talking about the actual truth of what's going on or challenging the status quo, because, you know, the media already does that, right? No, the media doesn't do that. That's why people have developed their own sense of independent thought, because the media has failed to do that. So again, this guy is pushing for the same type of fascistic control that a lot of these people fear is coming from Nazis or white nationalists. This is the same thing. It's just in a cryptic form of the internet, and the internet is just as real as the actual physical world. Like, it is where people live and reside in now. Yeah,
and it's disgusting because he's pushing, like you said, fam, the censorship. Just get back in line, watch your cat videos, don't go look at anything else. Don't research anything. Just listen to Big Brother.
Don't question.
We'll take care of stuff, and people will cheer on this form of censorship. Here's the proof. He was once again back later on in his statements where he tells these guys, you have to take shit down, almost. So here he is.
To remain up. I mean, according to report, just 12 accounts on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram account for 65% of all the vaccine disinformation on your platforms. You're exposing tens of millions of users to this every day. I don't have the stats on YouTube, but my understanding is it's similar. So my question is, why in the midst of a global pandemic that has killed over 500,000 Americans, that you haven't taken these accounts down that are responsible for the preponderance of vaccine disinformation on your platforms? Will you all commit to taking these platforms down today, Mr. Zuckerberg?
Congressman, yes, we do have a policy against allowing.
Oh, I know you have a policy, but will you take the sites down today? You still have 12 people up on your site doing this. Will you take them down?
Congressman, I would need to look at and have our team look at the exact examples to make sure they violate
today
the policies,
and get back to us tomorrow, because those still exist. We found them as early as last night. Mr. Pichai, how about you?
We've removed over 850,000 videos in 2020.
You removed them all. You still have people that are spreading disinformation on your platforms. There's about 12 super spreaders.
We have clear policies, and we take down content. Some of the content is allowed if it's people's personal experiences, but you know, we definitely.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Dorsey. I see my time is getting expired. Mr. Dorsey, will you take these sites down? You got about 12 super spreaders. Will you take them down?
Yes, we remove everything against our policy.
Thank you. I see my time has expired. I will now.
He's just had it. Dorsey's like, yes, we remove everything that's against our policy. He's like, he's so frustrated and fucking done. But once again, fam, how fascist is this? This guy's openly calling to take down shit, like censoring the government, controlling what you can hear, what you can say.
Yeah.
I mean, fam.
I mean, yeah, they're bullying them into doing it, even if they wouldn't want to. And most of them are playing ball. It's as simple as that.
Yep. So now I want to show the other side. That was the Democrat, Mike Doyle. Let's show the Republican. Ranking member Representative Bob Latta, Republican from OH.
IO.
That's for Misty. And once again, he hits some great points, but then he kind of veers off to let's protect the children bullshit, which I'm not saying that we shouldn't protect children and stuff like that, but the way they kind of twist the stories is weird. But listen to what he says. He hits some great points.
This long overdue in the Energy and Commerce Committee. I'm deeply concerned by your decisions to operate your companies in a vague and biased manner, with little to no accountability, while using Section 230 as a shield for your actions and their real-world consequences. Your companies have the power to silence the President of the United States, shut off legitimate journalism in Australia, shut down legitimate scientific debate on a variety of issues, dictate which articles or websites are seen by Americans when they search the internet. When these actions are taken, users have little to no recourse to appeal the decision if they are aware of your actions. In most cases, we simply don't know. What does this mean for everyday Americans? We are all aware of big tech's ever-increasing censorship of conservative voices and their commitment to serve the radical progressive agenda by influencing a generation of children and removing, shutting down, or canceling any news, books, and even now toys that aren't considered woke. This is fundamentally un-American. At a recent hearing on disinformation and extremism online, Professor Turley, one of the nation's foremost experts on constitutional law, testified about the little brother problem, a problem which private entities do for the government, which it cannot legally do for itself. As of January of this year, Google has a greater than 92 market share in search. Facebook has over 2.7 billion monthly users, and Twitter has 187 million daily users. Your companies have enormous control over whose ideas are seen, read, or heard around the world. This gives you great power, and if misused, as we have seen in recent years, your actions have a ripple effect throughout the world that result in American voices being removed from the marketplace of ideas.
Okay. So a lot of interesting points, right, fam? He talks about, you know what I'm saying, what can be taken down, what can be put up. I think he was referring to the Hunter Biden situation, you know, hiding behind 230, using it as a shield when you're supposed to be a platform, not a publisher, but yet you're being politically biased towards one way. So he talked about a lot of great things in that, you know, little brother problems, like little guys trying to get going, and the fact that they're censoring like crazy and the actual control they have. But then he talks about this addiction problem with children and the devices they use to access social media. And this is something that both parties kind of agree on at one point. It's like the only thing they agree on. Later on, he kind of corners Mark Zuckerberg and asked if Facebook was responsible for this young girl who committed suicide when she was harassed by an online predator who took pictures of her online and said we're going to share them with her, with his, with her classmates and stuff like that. Obviously, he didn't say that he was should be held accountable. He kind of danced around it. But then he did get to an interesting point at the end of his questions when he asked Zuck what changes he would make to Section 230 of the NDAA. And this is kind of interesting because a lot of people will say, well, what kind of reforms do you want to the NDAA? And listen how Zuckerberg answers it, and then we can have a discussion on what really should be changed and what should stay and go. So,
such as child exploitation. What specific changes do you support in Section 230?
Thanks, Congressman. I would support two specific changes, especially for large platforms. Although I want to call out that I think for smaller platforms, I think we need to be careful about any changes that we make that remove their immunity, because that could hurt competition. So let me just call on these for larger platforms. I think first, platforms should have to issue transparency reports that state the prevalence of content across all different categories of harmful content, everything from child exploitation to terrorism to incitement of violence to intellectual property violations to pornography, whatever the different harms are. And
let me ask you quick now, where those transparency reports be reported to, and how often do you think those should be going out?
Well, Congressman, as a model, Facebook has been doing something to this effect for every quarter, right, where we report on the prevalence of each category of harmful content and how effective our systems are at identifying that content and removing it in advance. And I think the companies should be held accountable for having effective systems to do that broadly. The second change that I would propose is creating accountability for the large platforms to have effective systems in place to moderate and remove clearly illegal content. So things like sex trafficking or child exploitation or terrorist content. And I think it would be reasonable to condition immunity for the larger platforms on having a generally effective system in place to moderate clearly illegal types of content.
Let me interrupt real quick because I'm running really short on time, because I know in your testimony you're talking about that you say that platforms should not be held liable if a particular piece of content evades its detection. So again, that's one of the areas when you're talking about the transparency and also the account.
But, pretty much, family, about what he's talking about. Once again, he wants to put in a system that where he has to report to his overlords in the Congress that who their content moderation is going against and how it should be done. It's not about being transparent to the people. Like, in other words, we talk about that Section 230 of the NDAA says if you content moderate somebody, you have to be specific exactly why. You have to say, Fiorella, your channel was taken down for this video and what you said in this particular line. When you do that, you set a precedence now. Now you have to make sure that everybody has the same treatment across the board. The reason why they're so vague and they just tell you, okay, you just, what did they say, Johnny? That you didn't go along with our terms of agreements. You violated our our rules of agreement, whatever. That's very vague. Therefore, they can kind of like, you have to, it's very, very wishy-washy. It's
brought on purpose.
Yes, on purpose. So that's something that he doesn't even kind of mention, where as if when Jack Dorsey talked about, well, we have to make this open, transparent, and let it be seen across the board so everybody can know what's going on. Now we're going to set protocols that are going to be even across the board. That's the biggest thing right now. People are complaining about that person's getting special treatment because their political ideology is Huffington Post and whatever it can be, or Daily Beast, and they're in the good, so they get to do what they want, where you are the gateway pundit over here, and your political ideology is way different, and we're going to be very vague in the way we moderate you, shut you down, therefore we can get away with being a publisher and not a platform. So really, he didn't give us any good answers right there when he had the chance to answer.
It's not just a gateway pundit, too. It's the vast majority of it is actually cracking down on the left as well.
Anti-establishment, like Glenn Greenwald said. But once again, once you set that precedent, then you put yourself out there, then a lot less funny games can be played, but they'll never do that. And that's why he didn't even talk about it. He just says he was trying to, once again, strengthen the way they go to Congress and the way, well, look at our transparency reports. Who are the transparency reports going to? They're not going to the public. They're not putting them out there. They're showing them to their overlords in the Congress to make sure that they can do what they want to do when they want to do it, plain and simple. And this is the last one, Jan Schakowsky. She's a Democrat from Illinois. I mean, Joe Biden isn't the only one who's starting, and that's why it's really, really scary. Joe Biden isn't the only Democrat that we should be fearful of. There's a lot of people in Congress, fam, that suck. They need to go away. They're not adjusted for modern times. They're all over the place, and it's clearly they're just reading a script. Mm-hmm. So here's Jan Schakowsky.
It is not an exaggeration to say that your companies have fundamentally and permanently transformed our very culture and our understanding of the world. Much of this is for good, but it is also true that our country, our democracy, even our understanding of what is truth has been harmed by the proliferation and dissemination of misinformation and extremism, all of which has deeply divided us. What our witnesses today need to take away from this hearing is that self-regulation has come to the end of its road, and that this democracy, this democratic, the people that you see before you, elected by the people, is preparing to move forth with legislation and regulation. The regulation that we seek should not attempt to limit constitutionally protected freedom of speech, but it must hold platforms accountable when they are used to incite violence and hatred, or, as in the case of the COVID pandemic, spread misinformation that costs thousands of lives.
Okay. Fam, some things I just want to point out really quickly that are very scary. Number one, saying disinformation is what is leading to division. No, you're leading to division, asshole. You guys are being so fucking tribal in our own Congress. More you fight misinformation with more information, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, that is really disgusting. Also, the fact that she said Big Brother's going to think for you, okay? The regulation's coming. It's end of self-regulation. It's scary. Done. We're gonna decide what's good for you and what's not for you. And then about what is inciting violence. And I think this is the part which once again we talk about the vagueness of these laws and the vagueness of what they do. What is spreading violence and stuff like that? AOC said like words were violent and stuff like that. So you have the same kind of mentality going right here, fam. This was very scary. Your thoughts on that right there? Because she said a lot in a small amount of time.
You've said it. I agree 100%. That's scary that she's saying the end of self-regulation is coming. Yeah.
And I just wanted to last point out that, like I said, Joe Biden isn't the only one. They're all following the script. I think the elitists have to hire some new Congress people to get them more up to speed. Because watch this little 30-second moment of her just all over the place. It's like they don't even care what's going on. They're reading a script.
disinformation fed upon itself until it arrived at the Capitol of the United States on January 6th, which cost 5 lives. The lives lost in the insurgency were not the first cases of these platforms' failure, or nor even the worst. In 2018, Facebook admitted
I mean, just all over the place, reading a script, doesn't know what's going on, pushing fascism, fam. That's it. That's all all the videos I conjured up, because after almost 2 hours, I couldn't do it anymore, fam. I was like, oh my Lord, I can't do this anymore. They're all saying the same thing. They're being fascist AF. And I mean, I don't see any changes coming from our Congress when it comes to big tech. It looks like they're going to continue to push more censorship.
No, because the Republicans also push censorship for shit they don't agree with.
Yeah.
Too. A lot of them.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm going to mention when I talk about the Florida legislation, which is fascistic as hell, and it's being spearheaded by none other than the governor of Florida, Ron DeSantis. So.
Yep. I mean, it's scary times, and that's why you got to get out there and join the fuck censorship movement. Glenn Greenwald goes on. He has a tweet over here the other day, and now we're talking about all this. This is a lot to do with media, right? What media can be heard, what media can be said, what media is going to be shadow banned, what's going to be put up forth, what's going to be put behind, you know what I'm saying? They're picking winners or losing. They're picking what you should hear, what you shouldn't hear. And a lot of the mainstream media is just all on board with it and stuff like that. You know, they've gotten all their journalists that they like to go out there and capitulate to the establishment. So here's Glenn Greenwald in a tweet where he's kind of fighting back with what's her name, Brenna T. Smith, who you said is she's a young lady who just started with the USA Today, right? And they kind of went after him.
Yeah, you want to read her tweet first?
Her tweet says, my first story with the USA Today. Defendants in January 6th Capitol riot continue to crowdfund their legal fees online using popular payment processors despite a growing crackdown from tech companies. So she's... Go ahead, fam. Sorry.
So just her article, she was complaining about the fact that they're able to crowdfund their legal fees. Even though big tech is cracking down on them, how dare they, fund their legal fees? Like, you can think these people were bad. Yes, they should be paying. They shouldn't have been there. Whatever. All these things you can say. But by the way, initially it was a protest, right? So people have the right to protest. I would have the same opinion if people were protesting for something I support, whether it was Black Lives Matter, whether it was housing. Just attending a protest shouldn't make you, culpable. Now, if you started breaking shit, then yeah, there's the different levels, and those people should be allowed to fund however they should be allowed to fund.
Absolutely.
Just because you don't like what they stand for doesn't mean that they shouldn't be allowed to fund. That's the thing. I'm like that across the board, and I will show you exactly why I'm like that across the board. Because this, of course, can get taken and be applied to Black Lives Matter protests, leftist protesters. Yeah. If you start doing that, picking and choosing. But, the liberal agenda, the neoliberal agenda is to do that. And so if you click on this woman's Twitter, Jonathan, can you click on her Twitter real quick? She's worked for Bellingcat. She's written for Bellingcat. Bellingcat is one of the most it is just heavily. It's bullshit. It's lies. They all constantly put pro-imperialist regime change lies. They were very pro Syrian chemical attacks. We're saying that the Syrian chemical attacks were real. Very pro Russiagate. And the Grey Zone has caught them in a bunch of lies as well as of recent. And so Glenn Greenwald did this very controversial tweet that everybody was talking about, to the point where he was trending. Yeah. And he said, congratulations on using your new journalistic platform to try to pressure tech companies to terminate the ability of impoverished criminal defendants to raise money for the legal defense from online donations. You're well on your way upward in this industry for sure.
I know.
So people went after him because, oh my God, she's an intern. She's so young. She doesn't know. No, dude, she's working for these big, state propaganda narrative magazines or journals. And she it doesn't matter if she's an intern. She's literally putting out actual misinformation or just spinning this narrative, right? Where it's not okay for these people to raise funds. Again, you have to separate your emotions, and this is what a lot of the left can't do from what your ideology is and what these people are doing. They are allowed to raise funds to pay for their shit.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry.
This is America.
They're allowed to do that. And people had a really, really big issue with him saying that they are they're working class, and he put out a bunch of information how a lot of them were working class. Were there rich Trump supporters? Absolutely. They were the ones that flew across the country, were able to, put in a lot of money to go there, and they were mostly, some of them were in the Capitol itself. They actually managed to get through. But there was also a lot of working class people.
We met a lot of them.
That,
we talked to them.
That were there. We interviewed them.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't, yeah.
Well, I'm talking when we were taking the bus. Remember?
When we were coming back from the bus,
airport.
But I don't know their what is it?
They weren't walking around with Gucci bags, is what I'm saying.
No.
You know what I'm saying? They seem like true Americans from Ohio and all across the country and stuff. Of course,
what do you
we
mean
don't
by
know.
true Americans from Ohio? Because when you say shit like that, then people are like coming back at me. What do you mean by
true
working
Americans class
from
people from Ohio is what we talked to. Some people, you know what I'm saying? We talked to some working class people from Ohio. It was kind of cool.
Were you like, by true Americans, though, what do you mean?
I was being just
facetious?
Yes, very facetious, trying to be
okay. Because sometimes that doesn't come across. Like,
well, I don't care. Those people can kiss my ass.
No, but I mean, for people even who like us, like, we have to be very specific. Like, true, when you said patriot that one time, it's like, are you supporting that? What is it? Like, I support people's right to protest. I don't agree with a lot of the things they stand for. I support their fucking right to protest, though. And I think they should have the right to raise funds. I think once you start saying, oh, no, these people can't raise funds because of their ideology, then that's a problem.
That's
because
fascism.
Somebody else could come in and raise funds for what you deem to be a riot.
Exactly.
And are you going to go after them too? It has to be across the board.
And I think the fact that they use her identity to protect her from her ideology, oh, she's a young girl, how can you attack her like that? That's kind of messed up, too, as well. If she put it out there, she should be subject to anybody who has criticisms against what she says. I want to read the rest of the tweet. It says, not exaggerating. Seems like 50% of journalism these days is finding new ways to pressure and shame companies to silence, censor, and vanish people from the internet disliked by journalists. Their main cause is not transparency, but internet censorship.
Right.
Then he also talks about another article real quick. But this the fourth part, the one below that one, Johnny. See also, trust in traditional media has declined to an all-time low. This is something to point out. For the first time ever, fewer than half of Americans have trusted in traditional media. 56% of Americans agree with the statement that journalists and reporters are purposely trying to mislead people. And a society in which the population trusts journalists is important. Democracy needs that, but that's the opposite of what's happening, and they know that. And with Trump gone, they know the only pillar holding up the collapsing edifice has vanished. Just good shit from Glenn Greenwald, a lot of articles there and stuff, whatnot, talking about the way traditional media is kind of falling. People don't trust it. They understand it's propaganda going on. They see that they're pushing a narrative. They're not pushing, open discussions about what's really going on. You have to think this way, see this way, or if you don't think this way or feel this way, we're going to shame you.
Yeah, and censoring leads people to supporting more misinformation, real misinformation, because then they believe things like QAnon are real, because you're not allowing an actual flow of discussion. So people are like, oh, the government is doing this, and that. And instead of following actual facts, they go and they tend to create these things and take the actual conspiracy as fact. So the people who are trying to they say they're trying to fight conspiracy by censoring people. You're actually creating more channels of it to happen, and you're mixing in, like, because it just allows people to kind of create their own narrative because they don't trust the media. So more distrust lends more actual misinformation. Now, when you have to allow people to figure it out for themselves. You can't just say, oh, we're going to censor this because it's misinformation. There's a lot of misinformation on the left through people like Vaush, and I haven't ever once said take him down, even though he is actually spreading a lot of misinformation. So is MSNBC, so are CNN.
Russiagate
and
was the
so
biggest conspiracy theory we know of. And
exactly.
I mean, Jesus. And nobody took them down. In fact, they encouraged it and they pushed it even more. So it's like, you have to believe our team, the Team Blue, their rhetoric. Otherwise, you're ostracized and you should get the hell out of town. It's not about open discussions about, and that's the thing, what caused more damage? QAnon or Russiagate? I mean, actually,
Russiagate.
Policies are being made off the backs and the lies of Russiagate.
Mm-hmm.
Policy is being pushed. The Democrats are they're calling Putin a killer. They're just being, very forceful with NATO again.
Well, QAnon was also it caused a lot of damage because now they're saying that's misinformation. So anything related to that is misinformation. So all of that, because it was a PSYOP, an FBI PSYOP, is being used against us now too to crack that down. But it wasn't like, Russiagate was, the state narrative was far more damaging than any other conspiracy that could have been created by people.
I thought so. Johnny, anything else before we move on? David Guevara, thank you so much. It says, great job, guys. Keep the courage. Thank you so much. Roar Media, say it loud, fam. We are the press. We love our sisters and brothers at the Convo Couch. We love you too, Roar Media.
Roar.
Accidental activist Shanda, what's up? Damn right, fam. We are the media. OG North American Abe, what's up, Sheldon? We love you. What's good, fam? I've been on a bit of a break from politics, so I hope everyone's doing well. That was a hell of a break. What was it, 6 days? You didn't even take a whole week. Love you, buddy. Roar Media, love our sisters. Fee and Shanda, Woman in the Media. You guys are amazing. Bulls on Parade, song by, what's the name of the band? Rage Against the Machine. A country has freedom of speech when you regularly hear things that you disagree with. When a company censors at the behest of the government officials, that is unconstitutional. You're absolutely right, Bulls on Parade. Thank you so much. Hunter Carranza, what's up, Hunter? Say hi to Ty. Much love, fam. Standing in solidarity with you guys. And here, Embold Fate, I'll let you read that one.
Embold Fate said, I recall MSM media spreading disinformation that Trump wants peace with Korea because Russia. How many lives did that lie help get people killed? Iraq and Libya lies killed millions too. Congressmen should not have the right to guard free because they will only use it to get people killed. I think you meant guard free speech.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%.
Cultist Demon, thank you so much for the Super Ray. Many of us now see through AOC and the fraud squad, but most of us seem to still be bamboozled by another layer of control. Leftist celebrity intellectuals like Chris Hedges and Cornel West. They either shill for the Democrats, repeat imperialistic propaganda about China or other U.S. enemies, and slander really existing socialist countries. Hedges loves to badmouth East Germany and Yugoslavia still. Your thoughts on that, fam?
I don't know. He sent me a video. I haven't gotten around to looking to it, so I'm not going to comment on that.
Well, Cornel West has been a little bit kind of like, he hasn't been. I thought Hedges has been more.
I think Cornel is just old. Like, I think there comes a point in their life where they just stop.
Yeah.
They stop being kept up with what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting points. It's still Noam Chomsky. I hate his decisions. He always says to turn around and vote for the Democrat because it's the lesser of two evils, and I don't agree with that anymore. I believe it's doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results is the definition of insanity, and that's why we should never ever vote for the Democratic Party ever again. I think
it doesn't mean that there's nothing of value that they can say. There's still things of value that some of these people say.
Absolutely, fam. I agree. It's just certain things you have to be able to pick and choose what you think is right, what is wrong, what you want to hear, and what you don't want to hear. I think there's a lot of great things coming from Chris Hedges, but some things I don't agree whatsoever. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things I disagree with him, and we disagree with Cornel West on the show when he was kind of like, supporting Biden. Cultist Demon says, last point, and I'll drop it for a while. We don't want you to ever drop it, Cultist. Someone should ask Chris Hedges if he ever ran into or suspected any of his fellow journalists of being CIA agents, or if he ever had any dealing with the CIA. His response, including body language, could be very telling. Sorry to be negative, but no one is above suspicion. The enemy is so nefarious.
True.
Thank you so much for the super chat. Audie MRR, thank you for the super ray. Audie here from Modern Retro Radio. Keep fighting the good fight, guys. Audis. Is that right? Patrick S., he also left us a super ray, guys. Thank you so much. You guys are amazing. There's 60 people watching on the Rokfin.
Let's get to 100, guys.
Let's get to 100. There's 226. They're censoring
get that up
us over
too.
there.
Yeah,
let's talk about the next point, fam, because we put some tweets out there this week. One of our favorite guys, Anthony Grover Blinken, is an off-brand Pompeo.
Yeah, people are trying to say he's better than Pompeo. He is not. Let's look at some of the tweets he's
Tweet number 1.
So, yeah, this is pretty gross, He said, we are deeply concerned by growing signs of anti-democratic behavior and politicization of the legal system in Bolivia. The Bolivian government should release detained former officials pending an independent and transparent inquiry into human rights and due process concerns, because we care about human rights. And I said, this is what he really means. We are deeply concerned by growing signs of a healthy socialist democracy and anti-imperialist behavior against our death cult system in the United States. The Bolivian government is a threat to our war machine and the national security state. If they don't do what we ask, we will coup them. Because we have been wanting to coup Bolivia for a very fucking long time. We have been trying, they have managed to keep themselves under the boot, and that's why we see them as the enemy. We want their lithium. We want to continue extracting resources. We think that they're a threat because socialism basically defeated this neo-fascist takeover propped up by the United States and their NATO-backed allies. And so that is a threat. That means that these people aren't going to listen. So we cannot allow that to exist in Latin America, especially with the return of the the release of Lula and what happened in Bolivia and how Chile is fighting against fascism as well, and all these things that are happening. Like, that is a threat to us in Venezuela. You can't forget that. So they don't want these Latin American countries in the global south to have a different system that challenges their current system, especially with China and Iran and Russia and all these things happening.
Well, two things that I want to point out. Number one, that this is more hawkish than the Trump administration. Like, this is the Secretary of State saying this right over here. You know what I'm saying? This is like really scary shit. Number two, where are the freaking progressives at? This is talking about a country which has indigenous leaders. A lot of the indigenous people have power there, and yet the U.S. is putting their nose in their business once again and actually saying the people who had a coup against them, who they have now held responsible and jailed, should be let free.
Well, I got to push back and say it's not more hawkish than the Trump administration, because the Trump administration actually helped back the coup.
Well, we don't have that information. We're trying to find that. We've been saying, as more information comes out, we'd like to see lines of them backing the coup. We have Marco Rubio and whatnot and stuff, but that was, once again, we don't know if that was connected directly, and definitely the Secretary of State kind of stayed out of it. The Secretary of State here is getting involved and saying you need to release people.
But let me
that's worse
let
than
me
what
post it this
before.
way. If let's see, if Chuck the Schmuck and Nancy Pelosi had phone conversations with the leaders of against the legitimate democratic elected leader of Bolivia, like the Juan Guaido of Bolivia, wouldn't you think that would be problematic?
That's the Democrats. I'm saying the administration. You know what I'm saying? Like, once again, don't get me wrong, fam. I believe that the Trump administration silently was involved with that coup and stuff like that. There were backdoor conversations. I'd like to see more evidence coming out. But the Secretary of State didn't come out and do what Blinken just did. I'm
not
just saying
publicly.
That's even publicly.
Yeah, not publicly.
And once again, if Donald Trump and the Republicans
do it. But he did make tweets about cooing Bolivia. He did make tweets about going
Pompeo,
into Bolivia.
yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. I mean, I just push back against the idea that there's any bad. Yeah,
all right, I got you.
They're just as bad. I mean, you don't have to agree. I'm just saying, like, I firmly believe like they were just as bad. And like, again, like the Trump administration. In like, there were those phone calls between Rubio and all these situations, and then they clearly backed the what's her name, Agnes.
Yeah, Agnes.
And they clearly were pushing like the illegitimate guy. So yeah, I'm gonna say it's just as bad. This is like, Blinken is seen as better. Like, he's seen as like the more democratic one, and he's not. He's fucking awful. He's just as fucking bad. Like I say, he's an off-brand Pompeo, which by that I mean like he's literally the same thing. Yeah. It's just he's more cryptic about it. We talked about how he's going to be more cryptic via big tech, how he's going to be more, that sort of thing.
Guys, I'm going to have to agree with you here and say that I was wrong and you guys were right, because in fact it's the same military apparatus that's doing the same coup. Right. It's the same imperialistic arm. So I'm going to digress and say that my partners are right here. It's just as bad. They're both awful, is what we should be saying across the board. Now, here's number 2 tweet. This guy had a hell of a warmongering week. We are deeply concerned by... Oh, that is the same one.
That's the same tweet.
That's what I just put something on that. Somebody put tweet 2 there. Okay. I just made an opinion, too, as well, and we just kind of debated that opinion. So here's another one right here. Your friend, Madeleine Albright, fam.
Yeah, so he then said, one of my women of courage, hashtag women of courage, is Madeleine Albright. During her diplomatic career as a U.S. ambassador to the UN and the first female Secretary of State, her tenacity and effectiveness left the U.S. stronger and more respected globally. She's a role model for me and so many of our diplomats. Jesus. And it's like, they're just loving on each other, these warmongers. Madeleine Albright should be in freaking jail. She should be at The Hague. Like, she's awful. What did she do? She's like responsible for the death of thousands of people, if not more. And she, it's just disgusting. Pasha.
Johnny, if you click on Anthony Blinken's tweet there and go down a little bit, you'll see Caitlin Johnstone put a little clip up from 60 Minutes of Madeleine Albright right there. And look what this woman says. More kids died with sanctions against Iraq during the Clinton administration when Madeleine Albright was in charge, and she said it was worth it.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
Okay.
Yeah. 1996. I mean,
fucking disgusting.
She's disgusting. And the tenacity, by tenacity, he means her warmongering ways of not giving a shit about killing people in an effort to get their agenda and their goals met. That's tenacity in warmonger language. You get rewarded for being a heartless, cruel imperialist, and that's what he represents. Blinken. I mean, he's just as awful. He's just not propped up by the Republicans. It's just now by the Democrats. It's like, okay, well, same difference.
Yeah. Okay, so here's another one right now. I mean, this guy had a hell of a week right here, babe. March 25th. Ladies and gentlemen, check this out. Secretary Blinken said, I spoke with Yemeni Prime Minister Abdul Malik Saeed about our commitment to advancing a peace process in Yemen. We applaud the Republic of Yemen government's support for a nationwide ceasefire and a UN-led political talks. And I said, excuse me, how about the Houthis? Can the Houthis sit down over here? They're the ones who are being oppressed. They're the ones who are dying. They're the ones who have control. Yep. I mean, will they be at the table with the UN? I love when they go about the UN fam and stuff like that. But, I mean, it's just more of the same foreign policy, whoever's in office.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, he's also supported Juan Guaido. We didn't even put it in there. He supported Juan Guaido as the legitimate interim president of Venezuela. It's the same thing. He keeps supporting these people who aren't the leaders of these actual countries. The Houthis are in charge of Yemen, right? And so he's manufacturing consent to say, oh, okay, I'm with these people who are backing U.S. interests, but these Houthis, no, they're going to be kept off the table. So really, you're not supporting the people that are dying in Yemen. You're supporting literally like your own state narrative and your own political agenda.
I'm gonna do a thing. We were in Chinatown with Hard Lens having some stuff, and we were laughing hysterically. I wish Johnny would have seen it and stuff like that. But the scene from Life of Brian that I've showed you before, I made a little parody modern scene too, talking about Joe Biden's foreign policy. So here we go. This is a little quick. See if I can pull it off. This is the Life of Brian about when Joe Biden's being questioned about what bad foreign policy he has. All right, besides naming Juan Guaido, interim president of Venezuela, supporting a dictator in Haiti, giving a huge weapon deal to China, defending the agitators in Bolivia, allowing Saudi Arabia to defensively attack Yemen, not pulling our troops out of Afghanistan, stating that Putin is a killer, and actually bombing Syria to attack Iranian militias. What bad foreign policies does Joe Biden have?
Fam, that was great.
That was from the Life of Brian. It was an hysterical scene, and that's what I think about all the time. They're like, what bad foreign policy positions does Joe Biden have? Oh, you mean besides this, that, this, that, this, that,
you
this,
just don't
that?
hear about it because it's not Orange Man bad. And again, like, it's that aspect of it. The media is so distractive. It has such a giant hand in playing in this.
Should we get to the rest of it? Is that it? Anything else on this? John, you got anything to say about your boy Anthony Blinken? Okay, so we have Cam Schwari Kate, Patrick S., Cam Schwari Kate, left some love. Reeve Barker, thank you guys so much. You're always there for us. Rob B., Embald Fateh, 5 companies control 90% of the media. The fact that Congress didn't call for them to be broken up after the Iraq war disinformation tells you everything about what type of lies Congress is cool with. That's right.
Does it annoy anybody else that he says emblemed fate instead of emblemed fate when it's clearly emblemed fate? Am I the only one that's really ticked off about this?
But it's emblemed fate.
Like literally, am I the only one that just wonders why?
Okay. Emblemed fate says 5 companies control 90% of the media. Okay. And the fact that Congress doesn't call them to be broken up after the Iraq war disinformation. Remember that? They got on TV for years. Colin Powell, weapons of mass distraction. We have to get rid of Saddam. They pushed it. It led to death and destruction, the Middle East being set on fire, and that's where we are today.
I saw a thread where they were talking about it, and like somebody had archived footage of what it looked like, and basically it was like, people would be like, I'm putting the war on, right? Because they were like they were talking about the war nonstop, and they had the green footage, right? The nighttime footage of the bombing spree that was happening.
Oh yeah.
And it was like that. I don't really remember that though.
I do.
Well,
it was
there's evidence
CNN.
of that. There's evidence of that. I know what I'm saying, but it's like holy shit, that's what was going on.
Everybody was addicted to the TV
they
for
were
that, John.
displaying it like crazy.
That's why the millennial and Gen Z tend to be more anti-war, but also there's a portion of millennials that completely just have dismissed it and become the next generation of idiots because they just how do you go through the war in Iraq? How do you go through what happened at Occupy Wall Street and what happened with Obama and then this and then still how are you still a capitalist? I mean, that's my thing. How are you still a capitalist after you've seen the failure? How are you still an imperialist? How do you still support the status quo? Because at the end of the day, imperialism, it's the highest form of this monetary system that's failed. It's imperialism. To keep our empire growing, we need to feed it and continue feeding it and feeding it and feeding it. It's not going to end. So anyway, I wanted to get to this because we of course we always have a long show, but this is a really big deal right now. And a lot of young people are paying attention. My sister's actually paying attention to this. This is an Orwellian anti-riot bill. It's a bill that passed the state house in Florida. It's still got to go through the state Senate. It's called HB 1. And
House Bill 1.
I just want to throw it out because I made this into 2 sections. So we're going to talk first about America, but the UK is also experiencing massive hits to free press, speech, and privacy. But this is in Florida. In Florida, this gives police power to use violence on protesters. It basically gives them the ability to mark protesters as rioters. So just an overboard, they approved this bill, and it's HB 1. It's called the Combating Public Disorder Act, and it cleared the House on Friday. 79 yeas, 39 nays, spearheaded by Governor Ron DeSantis, following the Black Lives Matter protest last year. And, of course, doubling down after the U.S. Capitol riot in January. So he claims that this is going to be across the board, not hyper-partisan. But the opponents argued that it's attack on the First Amendment rights. It absolutely is. And supporters argued it will protect law enforcement and prevent public disorder, which was seen at the Capitol riot and across the country. Democrats tried to amend the proposal. It didn't happen. It's a GOP majority, so none of that happened. And then, God, I hate these ads that pop up. Yeah. And then they rallied against it for a while, saying that the language is too broad. I have a problem with any bill where the language is too broad. And we've criticized these bills that have too broad of a language because it basically makes any protester a rioter. And we're going to go exactly how that happens. But under this definition, if you have a large group of people who are if only 3 of them do something bad, everybody else there participating in a riot. So by definition, that is just encompassing everything.
Ridiculous.
It's a bill that creates a potential for widespread abuse, etc. And they say it's going to affect disproportionately these BLM protesters or protesters against police violence, right? Okay, so basically they can dictate what a protest is and what is a riot, and they can exert violence on protesters, meaning they can do whatever it takes to calm down this riot. So let's look at the actual legislation, Johnny. If you go to the House Florida Senate, and it's right there. It's the same thing. It has a twin bill in the Senate, in the House. It's the same thing, just different name. It passed the House, so now it's going to go on to the Senate. Basically, it's an act relating to combating public disorder is what it's called, and basically, they're going to increase the amount of severity that happens when you have a an officer, when you attack a public a federal building or a historical monument. So again, this is the Republicans going after the liberals or some on the left who have taken down, monuments that are from the civil rights, that are Confederate flags, all Confederate statues. This is it's in the language directly saying that is potentially up to a felony. So let's go over some of this really quick. So page 12, the first picture I have there, a municipality has a duty to allow the municipal law enforcement agency to respond appropriately to protect persons and property during a riot or an unlawful assembly based on the availability of adequate equipment to its municipal law enforcement officers and relevant state and federal laws. Again, it's very broad, so they can respond accordingly. What do you mean by that? So you think they can fucking shoot people? You think they can? I mean, you're leaving it very open and broad for that to be the issue. And then they're going to be, the municipality is liable for any damage, including damages arising for personal injury, wrongful death, etc. But if they are assaulted, then that's different. That takes precedent too. For instance, on this page, it says, I think 16, it says, it is unlawful for a person assembled with two or more other persons, and this is crucial here, and acting with a common intent to use force or threaten to use eminent force to compel or induce or attempt to compel or induce another person to do or refrain from doing an act or to assume, abandon, or maintain a particular viewpoint against his or her will. So basically, if you are protesting and you surround a person that is opposing your view or an officer, and you are trying to push them, they say that could be bullying. So it is unlawful for you to do that. It is, again, extremely broad.
They call it mob intimidation.
So kind of like what they did to, what's his name? Like, that would be considered mob intimidation. Rand? Was it Rand?
Oh, yeah.
So Rand Paul? Right, Rand Paul, when they were just, hey, say her name, blah, blah, blah. They could potentially look at that and say, that's mob intimidation. Poor guy. We need to protect him, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. They could potentially look at that. So
misdemeanor of the first degree.
Misdemeanor of the first degree. I'm going to go over what the ACLU says too, because it's much more clear in the ACLU. So whenever a person is charged with knowingly committing an assault on a law enforcement officer, this is the second thing, that's now increased. The level of punishment is increased, especially if the officer is engaged in their duties, meaning like protecting the people, holding that riot accountable. The offense in which a person is charged shall be reclassified. So they're amping it up as follows. In the case of assault, from a misdemeanor of the second degree to a misdemeanor of the first degree. In the case of battery, from a misdemeanor of the first degree to a felony of the third degree. So it keeps going on and on and on. In the case of aggravated assault, from a felony of the third degree to a felony of the second degree. And in the case of aggravated battery, from a felony of second degree to a felony of the first degree. So again, officers, if you do anything to them, if they claim you do something to them, you could be faced with a freaking felony at this. And so there's differentiating between a normal person, you having, going after a normal person versus you going after a cop. But again, what could a cop see as an attack? Throwing a water bottle? Absolutely. They've done it before. People have thrown water bottles. They've thrown, rubber bullets and other these things, right?
It makes me worry, fam, because what if there's like 6 people just walking somewhere and they're getting a confrontation and stuff? When you say normal, you mean like people who are not attending a rally or whatever? Is that what you're saying and stuff?
Yeah.
It's
3 or more people do something that they deem violent, the whole thing is a riot.
I mean,
so really essentially,
somebody was wearing a Black Lives Matter shirt. There was only 3 people walking. We can still fucking charge them with more than what a regular person, a normal person,
it's so
a
broad.
Person not attending a rally. It is way, way too broad. Go ahead. I'm sorry. For
no, for purpose of sentencing under Chapter 921, it says a felony violation of this section committed by a person acting in furtherance of a riot or an aggravated riot. And then they talk about how bad it is, like how it's just going to continue going up. We have, let's see, down over here, this page, I believe it's page 19. Here it is. Any person who, without the consent of the owner, willfully or maliciously defaces, injures, or damages any means of memorial or historic property as defined in this section, blah, 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 damage is greater than 200, commits a felony in third degree, punishable, blah, blah, blah. So this is like a felony in the third degree if you take down a Confederate statue, which people have been doing. So this is directly an attack on those people doing that, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. Then you go to the next page. I believe it's page 19 still. Any person who are without the consent of the owner, blah, blah, blah. I think it's the same thing.
Same thing.
And then
for that first one, they also have to pay restitution, which will include the full cost of repair or replacement of such memorial historical.
It ain't gonna be cheapy
right.
too,
So,
Johnny.
So when you're marked with a felony
That's
of a property, yes, you always have to pay restitution. So that's obviously part of it. That's going to be the least of their worries because they would have a felony on their record. And if you commit a burglary at the page 22, Johnny, at the very end, if you commit a burglary during a riot or an aggravated riot, that burglary is facilitated by the conditions arising from this riot, then it basically means civil unrest. What does riot mean, right? It says civil unrest, power outages, curfews, or reduction in the presence of response time of first responders, etc. So they can anything they deem a riot, basically. Then the conditions are heightened, the punishment is heightened, and they're subject to that is subject to such a state of emergency may not be released until the person appears before a committing magistrate at a first appearance hearing. So for the purposes of sentencing under Chapter 921, a felony offense that is reclassified under this is ranked one level above the ranking. So it's going to be a higher felony. Then it talks about a burglary felony in the third degree, etc. So they classify things like how if you commit something that they deem as a burglary or something bad during a riot, then you're going to get a higher punishment. Yeah. And like I said, I'm going to go over to more of the basic stuff that you can get out of this. This is just a direct language. The ACLU did a whole thing on it.
Yeah. It's kind of just, I just want to say, Florida has a lot of these stupid draconian laws, and this is a doubling down on bullshit. Whatever the crime for sentence for murder is, should be the sentence for murder. You shouldn't, or for damaging, whatever it is. Those what the laws are. But this seems like a tit for tat kind of thing, fam. Like, oh, if you're gonna go after the insurrectionists, we're gonna go after the BLM people who did this all summer and stuff like that, and we're gonna impose harsher sentences on them if they're part of what we deem to be a riot. Right. You know what I'm saying? It's bullshit. I mean, there are laws in Florida. Like, for instance, I have an old friend from high school who's now serving a life sentence, I think, because he was committing a home invasion with a friend. The cops came in. They shot the one dude. He gets charged with that murder that the cop shoots. That's Florida fucking draconian laws. Yeah. And now they're doubling down with this bullshit over here. I've never liked that stuff when you say we can classify this kind of crime as a hate crime and make it more, or, you know, whatever the case may be. In this case now, as a riot or a protest and make it more. No, the laws are there. Whatever the price you have to pay, whatever the law is for taking down a statue should be the same, whether you're with some people or not some people. You know what I'm saying? It should always be the same. It should be consistent across the board. This is a way of them just pushing their ideology further and in your face and saying, no, our way is better than your way, and we're going to punish you more. So.
Yeah, exactly. It's hyper-partisan bullshit.
It is hyper-partisan.
So then they go on to talk about what a person commits a riot if he or she willfully participates in a violent public disturbance involving an assembly of 3 or more persons. So here they're defining what it is. So a person commits a riot if you participate in a violent public disturbance. What is a violent public disturbance? Anything could be like the LAPD calls anything a violent public disturbance involving an assembly of 3 or more persons acting with a common intent to assist each other in violent and disorderly conduct. Again, disorderly conduct, obviously if you're protesting something, you're against whatever that is, so you are engaging in disorderly conduct. I mean, they can say that that's what it is. And they talk about the different levels. Again, injury to another person, damage of property, imminent danger, a person who commits, and so if you look at this this text, everything they scratched out is taken out, and everything that's underlined has been added in, just for context, so you guys know. So they added a lot of things. They took some things out, basically making it worse. And they're talking about what it means, right? You're committing aggravated rioting if you participate with 25 or more other people. So if you have a giant protest and somebody does anything, maybe throws a water bottle, or you stay there longer than the police want you to stay, it's a riot now. Right. And so now this is an aggravated riot It is fucking
It's so
disgusting.
stupid.
Property damage by forced vehicles. Of course, we've talked about the police. And number 4 on the next one, it says a person commits inciting a riot if they incite another person to participate in a riot. I mean, how hypocritical is this, fucking DeSantis? You're talking about the Capitol 6 riot and you're talking about inciting violence. Trump incited violence. Well, here you go. You're saying that these people are going to be inciting violence. It's so broad. Aggravated inciting violence if it's bodily harm to another person, property damage in excess. So if you, I don't know, graffiti a building and it's more than $5,000, ooh, you're committing aggravated inciting of a riot. Or you supply a deadly weapon to another person, or you teach. So again, like, let's say Florida doesn't have open carry, do they? No, I don't think so.
I think they do.
They do?
I think it's counties.
No,
it's by counties.
It might be by. I'm not 100% sure if they do or not. But for instance, if you were in an open carry state like Virginia, this would be very difficult to happen. But if you're in a state like Florida, you can't have these militias there. You can't have these militias defending people because you could potentially get in trouble. I think Florida's a lot more laxo than California. Yeah. So,
can I also say the fact that once again, we've been to a lot of these protests. They're not a monolith. You know what I'm saying? People join these protests that are not, they don't know anybody there. The organizers don't know who they are. I remember the first skateboard that went through that patrol car in the Black Lives Matter, the first one we went to in LA in the beginning of the summer. That person was just somebody who just joined the, So now if that person does something bad, who is really not part of the organization, who was not, didn't do anything at the order of anybody from the organization, just acted on his own. Now they're going to deem his sins on everybody else. I mean, that just seems kind of weird to me. How do you? Shouldn't you just hold everybody accountable, the individual, for what they do, rather than try to paint the picture on the whole protest or whatnot?
But that's the same thing with the Capitol 6 insurrection. It's the same thing. Like this is like ridiculous now because this is directly aimed at pretty much the left. Like, this is obviously, they're going to be the ones getting, of course you're going to have some people on the right be affected by it, but I mean the language and everything, it's definitely marked on the left. So bullshit. It is. And so the ACLU basically summarizes this really well. They oppose the bill because it's designed to further silence, punish, and criminalize those advocating for racial justice and an end to law enforcement, excessive use of force against Black and brown people. They talk about the murders of George Floyd. Okay, so under the current law, under existing law, peaceful protests were met with tear gas, rubber bullets, mass arrest, and under existing law, armed officers in full riot gear repeatedly used excessive force against peaceful unarmed protesters. That did happen. Florida's militaristic response against Black protesters and their allies demanding racial justice stands in stark contrast to the lackluster. See, this is where they talk about the failed coup of white supremacist terrorists. So again, this is like a tit for tat. It should be across the board. And they're talking about it stands in contrast. Yeah, it stands in contrast. But again, federally, they're literally pushing this whole white domestic terrorist thing. So we need to have a crackdown on these people. So if you continue to do tit for tat, it's not gonna work out. This is what's gonna happen. A civil war here with this shit. They really are. So here it is. Floridians wishing to exercise their constitutional rights would have to weigh their ability to spend a night in jail if the protest is deemed an unlawful assembly. Peaceful protesters could be arrested and charged with a third-degree felony for committing a riot, even if they didn't engage in any disorderly and violent conduct. Again, that's exactly what we were saying.
Deemed.
So then they go on to mention a couple things. The bill is overbroad and vague and will chill speech in assembly. And you should care about speech at all times.
The next one.
At all times.
That one more. Right
that
there.
one. So it's just broad. It would further create discriminatory police tactics on protesters. So committing a riot. So it creates a new statutory definition for a riot that is so broad and unworkable that it allows for an individual to be arrested for committing a riot without any requirement that the individual's conduct be disorderly and violent or that they commit any actual damage or injury. Under the bill, a person, quote, commits a riot if he or she participates in public disturbance which involves an assembly of 3 or more people engaging in violent conduct, resulting in injury or damage, or creating a clear and present danger of personal injury or property damage.
Bullshit. It's crazy.
It is important to note that the bill's definition is broader than the current case law as outlined by the Florida Supreme Court. The term riot at common law is defined as tumultuous disturbance of a peace by 3 or more persons assembled and acting with common intent, either executing a lawful private enterprise in a violent and turbulent manner, blah, blah, blah. Under current law, to be guilty of a riot, the individual and at least 3 others need to intentionally execute a tumultuous disturbance of the peace by acting in a violent and turbulent manner to the terror of the people. Under this bill, mere participation in an otherwise peaceful protest where there are 3 other people engaging in disorderly and violent conduct would subject all those present at the protest to a 3rd-degree felony, punished by up to 5 years in prison, $5,000 fine, felony disenfranchisement, and all the lifelong collateral consequences of a felony conviction, including significant barriers to employment, education, and housing. I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, a felony on your record is
for peacefully showing up to protest and having to be responsible for anybody else in that protest, what they deem to be a riot. This is really an infringement on our civil liberties right here.
It absolutely is.
I'm a civil liberties guy, and I'm telling you, this is bullshit. Yep. Not everybody who shows up to these rallies or these protests are monoliths. There's people who just come along, and in fact, in LA, there's a lot of homeless people who show up that are pissed off that can just start something. So you're saying in a peaceful protest where the organizers have not told anybody to do anything violent or destructive. In fact, a lot of the Black Lives Matter rallies we went to, we saw a lot of the organizers making sure that people don't get too close to the cops, they stay organized, they don't do anything stupid. But then you get somebody who just joins this big march, does something dumb. Now you're going to hold everybody else accountable in that protest for what that one jerk off did. This is fascism. This is bullshit. So then you don't show up is what they're trying to do, right, fam?
Yeah, they're trying to basically crack down on protests, but also I'm even going to go further because I believe certain forms of non-peaceful but non-violent protests would 100% classify as a riot, meaning, some of these things are going to become necessary as the government continues to really just crack down on people, continues leaving them in the dust. When we're talking about what happened during the George Floyd protests, there was a takeover of some of these police precincts, and that was felt justified by what had happened, right? Like, so for me, like, the anarcho-commie in me is like, well, that's gonna happen. At one point, you're not gonna obey the law because you're protesting the injustice that's going on. So this just makes it impossible to even get to that point because they're basically saying that if you do anything that they deem violent, then you're completely going to be taken taken down. When we talk about the protests of the civil rights movement, they weren't necessarily violent, but they were not necessarily always peaceful, right? There's a little bit of a difference here between peaceful and nonviolent, because if you're protesting the status quo, you're obviously not going to, you're protesting the law, you're protesting the current state of things, so it's not always going to be peaceful. Now you're deeming something that's not necessarily peaceful but that is still nonviolent, you're deeming that as a riot. So we're not going to be able to have the protests that we had during the civil rights movement. We're not going to be able to have these anti-war protests and all these things because they're going to mark all of that as being just this riot where you're going to be killing people, and that doesn't happen. Like, it hasn't happened at all. I mean, the closest thing, the insurrection? I mean, come on, dude. Like, it was major property that was mainly damaged there, and there were altercations between law enforcement and people. But again, like, that always happens. It happens the other way around. They just wanted to make an example out of it, and now these people are coming back with tit for tat, and this is just as fascist as any sort of censorship that's happening. This is like on the ground stuff. Yeah. Absolutely, a form of censorship on our free speech, and I'm 100% opposed to it. And it's very hypocritical of DeSantis to talk about, going after Google on one end.
Censoring big tech companies and then doing this.
And that's the same thing I always bring up. I know Gloria always brings up. I know, Misty always brings up, like, if you're against the national security state apparatus, big tech coming down, big brother, and you're just going to give more power to law enforcement, to these municipalities like the city, like the mayor and the state to come after you, then you're only for it for your political narrative and your political agenda. You're not for it across the board. And that's the problem I have with this hyper-partisanship. It exists both on the Republican side and the Democratic side where they're just playing games. I'm against all types of fucking fascism. I don't care if it's on the ground. I don't care if it's big tech. I don't care if it's whatever it is. Like, I'm against all of it. And we should be completely just across the board on it, right? And just anything else. I mean, I just wanted to say it's on the next page. It would result in the arrest of nonviolent individuals lawfully exercising their First Amendment rights for committing a riot based on the conduct of some others in attendance. Like we know,
that's what I'm saying. That's the most ridiculous thing.
It's bad. Then they talk about the aggravating riot, the encouraging a riot, criminalizes the encouragement of somebody else to a public assembly rather than the inciting a riot. So if I say, hey, let's go to this protest, come on, yeah, let's eat the rich, bam, that could be considered a riot, and you could be liable to a felony as well. Mob intimidation, this was a newly created first-degree misdemeanor, is defined even more broadly, covering any group of 3 or more acting together to compel or induce or attempt to compel or induce another person by force or threat of force to do any act. So force is not defined by the Florida statute. Okay, so basically it is problematic that the force required by this provision is open to interpretation. Again, it's open to interpretation. It is so broad, and within this context, it would be very difficult to say that, you know, just 3 people and you saying pressuring another one to join something or drinking a beer. It just can expand so much instead of really bad precedent. So it's really bad. You guys should read if you want to understand it better in more layman's terms. But if you want to look through the creates harsher misdemeanors and felonies for existing offenses, it'll tell you how much you would be punishable by. A simple assault, which is normally a second-degree misdemeanor, for example, would be a first-degree misdemeanor punishable by an additional 300 days in jail. Yeah. So you can go down. Like they literally say a simple battery, boom, they go it up to now it's a first-degree misdemeanor punishable by a year in jail. This is what they were trying to do to those kids in Colorado at the PSL, which, by the way, breaking news, they did
drop all the charges.
Drop all the charges, thankfully.
Yeah. And this is bipartisan as hell, fam. This
Absolutely.
is once again, this is like, okay, you're gonna say the people who committed atrocities or went over the line on the J6 protest. Now we're gonna get back at you, and we're gonna impose harsher sentences because the whole summer Black Lives Matter and Antifa did what they did, and Donald Trump kind of spewed that rhetoric. Now they're just going tit for tat right now. This is the crossfire we don't want to get caught in. You should not have a higher sentence for the same crime that's committed for somebody else who wasn't in a protest. This is completely ridiculous.
Protest is a
and they're trying to
Amendment
shut down it's freedom of speech, and they're trying to shut down protest period over here. This is a form of fascism. This is a very bad push by Ron DeSantis.
Johnny, anything? Did you want to say anything on this? Okay, and the bill also protects Confederate monuments, as I've laid out for you guys. That's directly a gift
You're literally saying that these monuments are more important than other monuments.
Yeah.
Because it's ideologically, we like them, and we think it's wrong that you tear them down. It's stupid.
And so just so everybody knows, it passed the Florida House. It's now got to go through the Florida Senate, and, you know, that's what's going on.
And
like
you
I
said, that DeSantis will sign it when it gets them because he's spearheading this.
Well, yeah, he's spearheading it.
So.
And if they pass it by the Senate and it's signed into law, of course, then this is going to be a really, really bad thing. And in the Senate, it's called SB 484. In the House, it's called HB 1. And this is the Florida state only. So it's not a federal, it's a Florida, but it's really dangerous. And again, if it passes, other states could emulate it and
I'd like to see what some Florida congressional members say about it, though. I'd like to see what Gates has to say about this, what not, and stuff. He's supposed to be a free speech advocate. I want to hear what he says about this and stuff like that. I'd like to see him once or somebody stand up and go, you know what, ideologically, I'm against what happened this whole summer and stuff like that, but I'm against this bill right here because this is unjust. This is playing partisan politics, and we don't need to do this to further inflame anything else. So. BX Commie right there.
Okay, hold on. He said, Emblem Fate.
Emblem Fate?
Emblem Fate said, I haven't said anything about my name for a reason. In the words of the great con man, I'm going to let it play out.
So we're right. Emblem Fate.
I know Emblem Fate. No, I know I'm right. I know you don't want to hurt his feelings.
What do you
mean? I know I'm right. BX caught me. Big tech strikes again. Our anti-imperialist comrades at Hood Communists were suspended on Twitter. Let's show solidarity. They speak against colonization, the State Department military-industrial complex. Fuck censorship.
Hashtag fuck censorship.
Reeve Barker just got a 5-cent an hour raise at work. You will benefit from it. Reeve, you deserve a $5 raise. What the hell?
AOC was bragging about a $1.68 raise.
I think it was
an hour raise. So it could have been $1.86. Whatever it's. If it ain't $12 an hour raise, it ain't nothing. We're so far behind when it comes to our hourly wage in this whole country. It's disgusting. Bulls on parade. The entire goal of protests are to force the government to change things.
Right.
Yeah, well, they're going the opposite way. Bulls on parade. So does that mean all protests are illegal in Florida? That's what they're trying to do.
Like, it's so broad that you could make anything that goes. What the fuck is the point of a protest if you're going to be like in line with the current status quo? There's no point, right? There's no point.
Yeah.
All right. So
what's going on in the UK, fam?
So this is really this is really scary that this is happening all over the world. So the UK's government new anti-protest bill. And this is a new bill ordered by Home Secretary Priti Patel, and it could see more power given to police at protests, and they're opposing it right now. This is in light of what took place at a vigil for Sarah Everard on March 14th. Yeah. And so many are concerned that these new measures proposed by the bill is called the Police Crime and Sentencing Bill, could mean protests or similar public gatherings will become more difficult to organize and less safe for attendees. So so we're going to go over what happened on March 22nd. It was a protest against this bill in Bristol turned violent, leaving 20 officers injured, 2 seriously, according to the BBC. But I wanted to talk about exactly how this came about. And it came about because of the woman Everard. So on March 14th, women came together to mourn the protest death of Everard. The 33-year-old went missing after being seen walking from Clapham to Brixton. A police officer has been arrested and charged with her murder. So even though the police officer has been arrested and charged, they haven't directly connected 100% him to the murder. The police presence and actions at the vigil were criticized, and even Boris Johnson said he was deeply concerned by footage of the event. Videos showed women being dragged off the bandstand, handcuffed and forced to the ground. For this reason, there are worries that more police powers will make protesting even more unsafe for protesters. So that's what I wanted to point out on that. And that is how it started. And I have this tweet right here that I wanted to bring up. Ash Sakar said, "Let's be real, nothing would be happening in Bristol were it not for police attacking the vigil of Sarah Everard last weekend, or the government trying to push through a bill which restricts civil liberties. You don't keep the peace by clamping down on peaceful protests." Okay, so let's look at some of the things that happened on, I believe it was the 22nd, it was right before that. So this was the Kill the Bill protest, right? They had a protest to kill this bill. Yeah. And the protesters clashed with these cops in the UK in demonstrations against the draconian policing legislation. This is what they're calling it. And hundreds of protesters went to Bristol to protest this bill that would expand police powers in the UK. Clashes broke out. The House of Commons passed a controversial policing bill last week. So the House of Commons passed it. Now it's going to the House of Lords, which is what happens. And so let's play some of these tweets here. Siri Thomas, Johnny, just go to that one and we'll play some of what happened at this protest. And then the next one is
mounted police.
Reportedly missiles thrown. The police retreats. The next one after that is footage from Rupley. Police clash with protesters at the Kill the Bill rally in Bristol.
Jesus Christmas. They're pissed.
Okay.
The next one?
The next one is they lit a car on fire. Okay, so all of those things were happening, right? As of a few days ago.
I have a tweet too with the dogs. They're running around with freaking German shepherds.
Yeah.
Like there's like literally, and I'm not talking about like 2 dogs. There's like 10 dogs and shit. I'm like, what the hell is going on?
So this woman did an op-ed on RT, and it said new anti-protest bill targets Britain's most marginalized, but history shows us that people will not be silenced. So I wanted to specifically show this part where she talks about the government rushed through the new bill earlier this week by 359 votes to 263, a majority of 96 after it was overwhelmingly backed by the Tory MPs. The new legislation has authoritarian Home Secretary Priti Patel's fingerprints all over it. It includes provisions to crack down on demonstrations if they are too noisy or cause serious annoyance. That's actually in the bill. It also seeks to extend the punishment for people who damage statues up to 10 years in prison. Damaging statues up to 10 years in prison, that's even more draconian than Florida. And give more powers to police to shut down peaceful protests. There are even more robust powers intended to criminalize the living circumstances of Gypsy, Roma, and traveler communities. In Europe, you have these gypsies that come through. When I was in Amsterdam, they would just board the ferries, and they wouldn't rent, any place. They would just get a ticket there. There's a lot of that going around. So all these people, they tend to get criminalized. Like all British governments, the Tories want order. The British ruling elite love laws and rules and love harsh penalties if they are breached. No matter which party they represent or what board of directors they sit on, they need order, as it is the only way this deeply unequal society can function. So again, if you see the language and what they're doing, it is very similar to what's happening here in America. It's eerily similar. It's eerily scary of just how similar it is. Yeah. And here's the latest of what's happening with that bill. Just want to go over it. So the latest is that the bill is currently going through Parliament, which is going to give, if it passes, it's going to give police a lot of more powers. Why is this? 1 second. Okay. So they've been protesting. The police arrested 10 people during the third night of protests against the new policing law. So Boris Johnson, who of course is the current prime minister, condemned these, quote, disgraceful attacks against police officers in Bristol. And he said our officers should not have to face having bricks, bottles, and fireworks being thrown at them by a mob intent on violence and causing damage to property. The police in the city have my full support. So he's taking the side of the police. How similar. And, they want to kill these demonstrations. And there's a lot of backlash with the people, right? People are actually taking to the streets to protest this bill. I would like to see something like that happening in America, where people take to the streets for some of these draconian laws rather than, like
but
some
it
of the
did
other
start
shit.
off in I don't want to compare it to George Floyd. Obviously, it was a racial thing, but a woman being murdered by the police. So it was kind of like their moment, this young woman was killed by the police.
Right.
So that's what brought them out there in the first place, which then triggered these laws. Just what happened in the United States. George Floyd got there, people got pissed off, said enough is enough, take to the streets with the police, and it triggered a bunch of laws. Not what DeSantis is trying to do. That's why when you were telling me the similarities, I was like, holy shit, it's almost identical.
Right. She was killed. The police officer was arrested and charged for her murder. We don't, like I said, they haven't convicted anybody of anything yet, but then they were trying to make these liberals, what happened is that the liberals were trying to make it about, females facing toxic masculinity and all this stuff, but it was really about somebody murdering her more than anything else. And so they went to a vigil, and the police started attacking people at this vigil. And so then it became this back and forth thing, and they're trying to pass this law to protect the police. But the police kind of started, just like it always happens, right? The police are the ones engaging in this sort of no, you can't say this and blah, blah, blah. You can't do this. You can't protest. So people are going to have a backlash. And over there in Europe, they're a lot more aggressive than we are here. I mean, they're over there burning.
The people are.
Yeah. They're more aggressive against law enforcement.
But I was going to say, but law enforcement in England.
No, is not.
Is known to be nice.
Nicer than
they're
us.
Nicer than Americans. In other words, somebody sent me a tweet too as well, because it's really funny, because you see it in a lot of movies the way hello sir, is there a reason why you're here? Can you please move on? But it says heaven is where the police are British, the chefs are Italian, the mechanics are German, and the lovers are French, and it's all organized by the Swiss. Hell is where the police are German, the chefs are British, the mechanics are French, and the lovers are Swiss, and it's all organized by the Italians. So
Jesus
when
Christ, no
when you
wonder.
talk about but the police is different than the United States. Like somebody had to explain that to me. It's like pasta. It's not like your
No, it's
police
not,
in the
yeah.
United States are like the German police. Gestapo motherfuckers. They're assholes. They'll swing back. In Britain, it's a little bit different. So when you're seeing this right now, this is very abnormal from what's going on, and hell is breaking loose right now in the West.
So yeah, because let's look at what the police are doing to people. They're literally bashing them. So Sarah Sultana, the MP, said people in Bristol were on the streets standing up to police crackdown bill and defending our right to protest. This is how they were treated. That's totally unacceptable. So you can see they're using their shields and bashing people, looking very American.
Yes.
Yeah. So then her next tweet, she talks about let me pull it up. She said the protest has won us vital freedoms. So protests in general over the years, from the right to vote to workers' rights. The police crackdown bill is an attack on the right to protest. That is an attack on us all. Those protesting against this bill are standing up for our rights. Eyewitness reports from Bristol last night, including video evidence, show deeply concerning heavy-handed policing and unnecessary violence. Disturbing footage even shows the police targeting accredited journalists. That is wrong and demands an explanation. Okay, so
is that happening here, fam?
That is happening here, exactly. But we're used to it. In Britain, they're not. And so you see this mass movement of people protesting against this bill. That would be like us protesting against what happened in Florida, against the what is it, what just passed, what they're trying to pass is this domestic terrorist bill, whatever. That would be like us taking to the streets by thousands and protesting that. The problem is in America, we don't do that. We're just like, oh, well, we're going to protest. We're going to say that this is racial injustice. While it is racial injustice, it is also an attack on our civil liberties. It's also an attack on your freedom of speech. This is why I always try to make the connections between freedom of speech, civil liberties, and whether it's a racial issue, whether it's a poverty issue, whether it's a housing issue. Those are all connected, because you cannot, like, if you're gonna be jailed for videoing a protest, like a lot of people were this past weekend, then that's a problem. That's impacting on your civil liberties. No matter what you believe in, you should be allowed to fucking film. And that's the problem. Those are the things that we are coming into question in the age of the internet. Who is and who isn't media? Because all these people have phones. Yes, we have press badges, but shouldn't the people who are filming be allowed to also be citizen journalists too? Like, that's all these things are happening. And so Britain, they're protesting this because it's massively, massively terrible and fascistic. And that just goes to show you that this is happening all over the world, especially in the West, where we're facing these authoritarian crackdowns on the people and on dissent. And it's really scary because these are the governments that are trying to maintain the imperialism and, you know, this sort of mentality where we have to be the empire that continues growing.
Yeah, it's just really awesome to see that, like, okay, so they came out to protest for this woman who was murdered by the police, and then they try to make laws right behind that to say, we're gonna nip this in the butt. This is the MPs and the Boris Johnson government saying we're gonna nip this in the butt. We're gonna give the police more powers. We're gonna give them more immunity, and then the people double down and say, oh, hell no, you're not doing that. You know what I'm saying? Like that. And I wish we would get to that level. It's not just the fact that George Floyd got, hurt. Like, this bill in Florida is something that should put people out. They should be in the streets right now. It passed one bill in the House, right? It's got to go through one in the Senate, and then the governor has to sign it.
Yep.
Guys, you're already behind
This one
schedule.
too.
Why aren't you out in the streets right now? This is some fascist fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
See how the Brits got out in the street real quick? Get out in the streets in Florida.
Yeah, well, so they can be arrested.
Well, the bill's not through
it's
yet.
Not through yet.
They can't be charged yet more and stuff like that. But that's the thing. They need to put a spotlight. They got to put that bill under a magnifying glass. We're sitting here and talking about what happened in England with that bill. You know, thank God that you found this in Florida. I didn't even know this was going on, fam. Remember when I was asking you, I was like, where's DeSantis stay on this? He wants to punish big tech for censoring people. He can't be for this bill. It's never going to get signed. No, he's spearheading it. Get your asses in the streets. I'm not inciting anything, but I would say if I were you.
He's spearheading it because a lot of these people, once again, they play party politics. They play whatever it is, the red meat for their whoever, the people they think they need. So, Johnny, what's going on?
I was going to say real quick, though, by the way, just before we get to Johnny, I just like to say I don't play team sports. Go ahead, John.
Who was that supposed to be?
Steve. He always says, I don't play team sports.
That wasn't really. You sounded like a country trumper.
What?
Okay.
Jimmy.
So I don't know if you guys saw this yet. There is video footage of the camps.
Yep.
So let's just watch this, and so you can see what it looks like, because it's revolting. It's revolting.
Wow.
I mean,
these are privileged critiques, okay? And you have to consider, when you're talking about nothing has changed, you're really saying that these brown and black communities, you're really saying that they're no one.
They
How
didn't
dare
work
you
for
say,
nothing.
Yeah.
Their work is in vain
Biden
because you're criticizing them.
Isn't doing what the Trump administration is doing. Biden is helping usher in change. Right? Don't you see it? Stop being so privileged.
So this person says, AOC and DSA profile. When you say nothing has changed, you are calling the people who are not protected from deportation no one. And we cannot allow for that in our government, our movement. And that's a direct quote from her.
Yep.
And what about the movement that refuses to see this? Exactly.
Wow.
There's all the Biden, all the blue, blue MAGA, all the, vote blue no matter who people. Who are just ignoring this shit. They're just ignoring it. They're ignoring it.
And you know something, John, too, as well? The Biden administration, the Democrats in whole, put this problem solely on the shoulders of Donald Trump throughout this whole election process. It was always about Donald Trump being inhumane, treating these kids in cages, pulling them away from their parents, and here they are.
Whatever to incite, to help their narrative.
Yep.
Possibly. I mean, that's what they're going to do. So AOC and DSA profile continue. So that DSA interview, right? That direct quote, that weaponization of cynicism is what has and what continues to threaten to tear down everything that we have spent so much time building up. We're allowed to win too, by the way.
Sorry, you gotta.
Yeah, Pasta, you ruined it.
My bad.
God.
So watch this, and this is your neoliberal version of the camps. So here's a reporter, journalist, whatever, human recording this thing, and listen to what they say.
Please respect. Please give dignity to the people. Please give dignity to the people.
So you work for the commissioner, your senior advisor. You were hired 2 weeks ago, and you're instructed to ask us to not have any pictures taken here.
Please respect the people,
because the
rules.
political leadership at DHS does not want the American people to know it.
Please respect the rules,
You keep
sir.
standing in front of the pictures, so
Please
you don't want the
respect the
pictures
rules.
taken. The rules are arbitrary, and
Please
they're
respect
designed
the
to
rules
keep
and
the
give
American
the
people in the dark.
dignity and respect. That's all we ask.
Well,
Dignity
no, it's
and
not.
respect.
You're asking, is this
Please-
dignity and respect? Look at these
Please
people.
give
There's
dignity
a
and
pandemic.
respect to the people.
Let me
I
ask you, there's a
I
pandemic.
respectfully ask you, sir.
There is a pandemic.
With
Is this
full-hearted,
respecting the rights of these
full-heartedly,
kids?
I ask you, please
Are you
respect
respecting the
people.
rights of these
This
kids?
is not a zoo, sir. Please don't treat the people.
You're right, and this is a
as such.
dangerous place.
Please don't treat the
And
people
your
like
policies,
this. That's all I ask for
unfortunately,
you,
are
sir.
trying to hide them. I understand
That's
you
all
were
I ask
instructed
you.
when 18
I
senators
ask you
came
to
down
please
here.
respect the people, give them dignity
I
and
respect
respect.
them, and I want to fix this situation.
We all want
and
to fix
the
it, sir. We
administration
don't
you're
want
working
this to
for is
happen anymore.
responsible for these conditions.
Please respect the people with dignity and respect,
And
sir.
I ask you to respect the people as well. This
I am
is not
respecting you.
respect.
I am respecting the
This
people.
is not respect.
Fam, John, come on. Look what she's saying. I'm asking you to respect the people by not showing them, by not filming them. Do you hear this bullshit? This is like AOC's crap. Oh, respect them by not showing. He's trying to bring light to the situation. Obviously, he's trying to politicize it because he's fucking Ted Cruz. But still, her rhetoric, I mean, guys, Jesus Christmas.
So this is, but unfortunately, it's what people fall for. Like, oh yeah, these aren't zoo animals. Yeah, I don't think in a normal circumstance, right? If people are in a facility and it's their choosing, and they want to be there, and it's like filming the homeless. You shouldn't do that. That's respect their privacy. They're out there. What are you trying to do by filming them, etc.? I 100% agree with that. This is different because these people aren't here because they want to be there. They're there because they're literally in an actual cage, in an actual building, and they can't leave. So the Biden administration is trying to hide that from the public eye. So in the interest of all the people, of the truth, a journalist or anybody that wants to show what's actually going on should be allowed to film what's going on. We should be allowed to report on it. We should be allowed to go in there and show what's actually happening.
Absolutely.
Because they're using that excuse of privacy to try to say, well, no, we can't show that. So they can go around saying that Joe Biden has cut child poverty in half, that Joe Biden has done so many great things for immigrants. So AOC can say that it's privileged to go after Joe Biden and look at the accomplishments we've made for immigrants. Those are the accomplishments we've made, AOC. That's why they don't want to show that. That's why Joe Biden said we're going to allow media once we have everything fixed and everything, the PR happens. Once we have all that set, then we're going to allow people to film. Right now, they don't want to allow people to film. That's why she's instructed to say no, to give these PR talking points. Like, no, respect the privacy of these people. They're not zoo animals. Yes, they're not. But they're literally being caged like zoo animals. That's the point.
Exactly.
Filming that they're filming them being caged as zoo animals isn't as bad as them actually being caged in there like zoo animals. Like, come on. Like why are you treating humans like this?
This is Nazi shit.
Yeah.
This is close to Nazi shit. This is close to concentration. This is what they were doing back then.
Yep.
They were not letting the press in. They were not letting people go view it. They were not letting people see the camps and shit. And so, let's fix it, and then we'll let people come in. That's literally exactly what the
Biden
Nazis
said
did.
too. He said those words, Johnny. He's like, well, you're not allowed in until we get the situation under control of some sorts. I mean, I was like, people, can you see what he's saying over here? You want to show this tweet? This is amazing too here.
Hold on. Yeah, so she went on to say, this person who shared it, AOC is silencing the left that opposes concentration camps. What kind of movement is that? AOC weaponizes identity to protect those keeping these people in cages, which are built to hold 80, but currently have more than 700 in each. That's not the movement I'm here for. So people are waking up. I don't know much about this person.
Finally, people are waking up. Finally, people are seeing people who actually liked AOC.
We'll take apologies now.
Again, we'll take our fucking apologies. And this isn't about. I wish I was wrong. I wish AOC would have proven me wrong. I wish Biden would have proven us all wrong. God, I wish he would have fucking done what he said he would have done from the start. We told you he wouldn't. We told you because he's not in charge. It's the same people in fucking charge. It doesn't matter. That's what I'm saying. The quicker you realize that electoral politics isn't going to save us, the faster we can actually move on to actually tackling the whole system. And it's going to require us perhaps breaking some of the draconian laws that they're pushing. It's going to require us actually demanding our power back because they're not going to give you fucking power. It's going to require all these things, but the more we continue fucking focusing on bullshit electoralism, that's not going to happen. Let Nina Turner go in there. More of us, it will change things. No, well, we're fucking killing people. We're fucking putting them in cages. We're bombing everybody. People we're in a fascist state where you can't say anything now. You can't even protest like normal in some states now. It's gonna be really bad. Journalists literally got arrested here the other day. Police are preventing me from filming. Police are preventing the media, not police, the government is preventing the media from filming what they rightly should be filming in these concentration camps. Like, that's what AOC called them when it was Trump. And now what? It's influx facilities. This is what we're talking about here. It's all connected from the very fucking concentration camps, influx facilities, cages, to the fucking State Department trying to call protesters these rioters and insurrectionists and white domestic terrorists, to what's happening in Florida, to even what's happening in the UK. It's all authoritarian crackdown of fascism. The fact that we can't question the vaccine, the fact that we can't talk about the election, this is all fascism, and it's all connected. And if we lose the ability to film, to speak out against it, to have dissent, we lose any ability to fight for the truth. These mechanisms, if we aren't here, how are we going to show you those videos? If those people get taken down from Twitter, how are those videos going to come out? That is exactly. Essentially what we're fighting for. It's not just our ability to say whatever the fuck shit we want. It's what the implications of that freedom of speech has. And this is why we're talking about Julian Assange, because what Julian Assange did is expose the government and their lies and the war machine. So this is again, it's all connected. So you can't say, oh, well, I'm not going to go support a protest for free speech because, Julian Assange is a rapist. It's like, no, dude, if without people like Assange and journalists like independent media and us and all these people, you're not going to be able to fight for these issues. So you better get on board.
Not to mention that case was completely
Yeah,
You
it
know,
was dropped
it was-
as they were wheeling him out of the Ecuadorian embassy, which is why we're doing it on April 11th to commemorate the 2 years anniversary of him being removed from that thing. Johnny, Ryan Ross says find the Easter eggs,
Someone
right?
said
You gotta
find the Easter egg.
please like that.
In reference to AOC's Easter egg thing.
Yeah. You know what really bothers me too, Johnny, though, is the fact that we're not talking about the main cause of migration. You got the Republicans go down there with their kabuki theater, look at the crisis at the border. They're just opening it up now. We have open borders, left and right, the kids in the cages, Donald Trump. We're not talking about why we have such a migration problem, and nobody wants to talk about that at all.
It's because of earthquakes and floods.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry, earthquakes and floods. It's not about imperialism.
If that's the case, then we're still responsible because of climate change.
Geoengineering.
Somebody said the weaponization of cynicism continues to threaten the recognition of all the great work our movement did to make the emperor's new clothes. Basically saying that, these people are used for labor, right?
Yeah.
And these kids.
Oh, yeah.
So that was the article. What did I say? So I
retweeted
I
it.
commented somebody said this is the exactly the type of criticism that needed to come out of that interview instead of that nonsense article. Yes, a few people saved from deportation is good, and that's technically a change from Trump, but a few people out of 10,000 isn't enough to really be called change. Yeah. And then this guy said, a better argument from an elected congressperson would be against the very imperialist policies that create refugees and drive them to the U.S.-Mexico border.
Thank you.
A better policy would be to oppose NDAA bills that further U.S. imperialism.
Thank you.
So I really agree with that. And then I did fact check. I made a false statement here. I said that she voted for. I said that AOC voted for every NDAA bills. She actually hasn't. She's actually voted no. But I said I fact checked myself. She voted nay on every NDAA bill. And he said, AOC and other congressional progressives have been consistent in their opposition to NDAA bills. It's important that they be vocal about their opposition.
Exactly.
The defense bills passed without much fanfare or attention. And I said,
meaning they wouldn't need her vote anyway.
They haven't been vocal about it at all.
Exactly.
They don't hold press conferences. They don't have 10 million. They're not using their 10 million followers to be like, hey, we need to completely urge every single member of Congress to vote no.
She voted yes on something though, and I can't recall.
I can't remember what it was.
It was related to ICE. I believe she voted for a bill that actually expanded ICE. I'll get back to you guys on that. I believe she did, and people were upset about that. But I'll look into that. I can't remember because it was a while ago. But she did vote for something. But yeah, no, the NDAA is like, it has a lot of things in it. So again, I think we covered it when Tulsi voted for one of them, and she didn't vote for any of them actually, and there was a specific reason why. And all these things happen. But again, if it's like a vote where they can just not vote for it, and they know it's gonna pass anyway. Yeah.
It's just to piggyback on that, fam, what John just kind of put up is her tweets get a lot more noise, make a lot more noise than her votes, because a lot of people don't pay attention to a lot of votes, what's going on in Congress. They don't watch C-SPAN, they don't look at these things and stuff like that, but they pay close attention, millions of people, to her tweets every day. So her tweets are actually a lot more powerful than some of her votes, and the fact that she just votes no on this stuff for cover because she knows it's going to pass anyway, and then stays silent on these things. What has she said on Syria? Nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing. And that's much more powerful.
And basically,
than actually her votes.
I retweeted and I was like, this needs to stop, and I'm legitimately asking people, like, how do we stop it when politicians like AOC are literally saying any criticism of the current administration is in bad faith? Should we protest at these camps? Armed, peaceful protests at these camps? Like, what is it going to take to make a change? Because obviously, what I'm trying to say is that it's not going to happen in the electoral.
It's not.
It's not going to happen.
It's not. People need to realize that it's not. No matter how many times we make fun of AOC or we criticize her and we criticize all these people, they're just going to say, oh, that's violent, bad face attacks from these edgelords, from these people that are just bad face actors. They're going to defend themselves, and these idiots will go and believe them. So it's going to take massive, massive direct action to actually counteract these politicians and make them uncomfortable, make them feel like they're not their lives, their livelihoods, like their jobs are in danger, make them feel like all of these things are happening. That's what it's gonna fucking take. I don't know what else it's gonna take. I mean, that's the only thing that we can do right now. That's why we're focused on protesting and on building direct actions, and why we're trying to make connections between people from different issues. So while we're talking about a fuck censorship protest in front of CNN, related, of course, to Julian Assange, we're also talking about how people who have been part of the anti-war movement have been censored, or how the lies of the mainstream media have perpetuated and manufactured consent for the war machine and imperialism. And then how housing and housing advocates, how none of that gets talked about in the mainstream media, and they paint the homeless people as being all of these drug addicts and being all these lazy people that aren't good for the community, while in reality they're actually fighting for some sort of to help themselves because the government isn't helping from them. They're getting smeared by the mainstream media. All of that is related to it. You want to talk about Medicare for all? Why isn't anybody talking about Medicare for all? Yeah, I mean, like in a pandemic, why isn't the mainstream media holding these politicians accountable? Why? Because we don't own the fucking, like, the mainstream media owns all the propaganda, and so it's all connected, guys. This is why we do what we fucking do.
What 90% of the mainstream media is owned by 6 different companies. So I mean, it's just disgusting.
It's
and
even
stuff
less
like that.
now, man.
And it's just so weird that the fact that it was Ted Cruz to pull out his phone and go, you know what, fuck this, I'm gonna start filming this stuff. Johnny, can we watch that one last tweet one last time right there that you got there, as far as her saying that stuff and just looking what she's saying? Please respect these people. Don't show the plebs what's really going on, and that's pretty disgusting.
Please give dignity to the people. Please give dignity to the people.
So you work for the commissioner, your senior advisor. You were hired 2 weeks ago, and you're instructed to ask us to not have any pictures taken here.
Please respect the people,
because the political
rules.
Leadership at DHS does not want the American people to know it.
Please respect the rules,
You keep
sir.
standing in front of the pictures, so
Please
you don't want the
respect the
pictures
rules.
taken. The rules are arbitrary, and
Please
they're
respect
designed
the
to
rules
keep
and
the
give
American
the people
in the
dignity
dark.
and respect. That's all we ask.
Well,
dignity
no, it's
and
not.
respect.
You're asking, is this
Please-
dignity and respect? Look at
Please
these people.
give
There's
dignity
a
and
pandemic.
respect to the people.
Let me ask you.
you.
There's a
I
pandemic.
respectfully ask you, sir.
There is a pandemic. Is
Full-hearted,
this respecting the rights of these
full-heartedly,
kids?
I ask you. Please
Are you
respect
respecting the
people.
rights of these
This
kids?
is not a zoo, sir. Please don't treat the people.
You're right, and this is a
as such.
dangerous place.
Please don't treat the
And
people
your
like
policies,
this. That's all I ask for
unfortunately,
you,
are
sir.
trying to hide them. I understand
That's
you
all
were
I ask
instructed
you.
when 18
I
senators
ask you
came
to
down
please
here.
respect the people. Give them dignity
I
and
respect
respect.
them, and I want to fix this situation.
We all want
and
to fix
the
this, sir. We
administration
don't
you're
want
working
this to
for is
happen
responsible for these conditions.
Please respect the people with dignity and respect,
And
sir.
I ask you to respect the people as well. This
I am
is not
respecting you.
respect.
I am respecting the
This
people.
is not respect.
Yep.
I mean, how fascist is it? Don't show this and to hide behind the please respect the people. You're disrespecting the people.
That's what she
like
was
they don't want to
instructed
be
say.
seen.
That's what she was instructing.
So disgusting.
She's just doing her job, just
Disgusting.
like the police are doing their job. She's just doing her job, Pasta. She's just been instructed to say that. Like literally, you can tell it's a regurgitated talking point that she was instructed to say. She keeps repeating the same thing because that's all she was told to say.
Yeah.
She can't say anything else.
Defend it with wokeism.
There's that. I mean, but
This
that's
is not a zoo.
That's the
This is not a
instruction of
zoo.
the administration. That's what they're told to
Disgusting.
fucking do.
I mean, Biden
So-
said that in his press conference. Well, yeah, well, you can't see it yet and stuff.
But this is what happens. This is what happens, and neither side wants to free these people and let
None.
them go. Neither side
No.
wants. Neither
Not
side
taking
cares. They're
responsibility,
just gonna
that's for
fucking
sure.
weaponize it for whatever political agenda it is,
Exactly.
and not change a thing. And that's the reality that needs to be exposed. This is why we criticize both the Democrats and Republicans, but the people really that are clouding this idea that Democrats are better are a huge problem, because I'm trying to tell you they're not. They're exactly the same.
Yeah.
And that's why I talk about these progressives and AOCs and all these types, because they're the ones that are trying to make you believe that one side is better when that's not the case.
Yeah.
Okay, you already
It's
know
one big
Republicans are bad.
aisle.
But you need to understand Democrats are just as bad. And that's what we have to understand. Once you understand that, then you can move forward to actually really awakening and really understanding what's going on here and
Yeah.
who's behind the scenes manipulating things from behind the
Well,
curtain.
I always say that the Democrats, the establishment Democrats, are more insidious right now because they're actually trying to pretend like they're for people. They're actually trying to pretend like they're for immigrants. They're actually trying to pretend
Right.
like they are for the little guy. But actually, when it comes to it, they're just as bad, if not worse, sometimes than the Republicans.
Well, when it comes down
especially
on
when it comes to-
immigration, for
Yeah.
sure. But when it comes down to other things, Pasta, like the Republicans, when they talk about how, we're for protecting, when they talk about we're going to protect you from these immigrants taking your jobs and stuff like
bullshit.
that. They're also weaponizing that as
they
well.
do, yeah.
And so they're not talking about the imperialism. While there's a few people in Congress that mention, foreign policy, it is literally like 1, 2, or 3. I mean, not even. Like it's very, very few. And it's really sad that that's who we have representing America, right? There's a reason for that. Our elections aren't fair.
Johnny, you want to read something? All right, guys. So we have Rokfin Czar. Thank you for the Super Ray contribution. I know that the president issues pardons, but I would love to see a forced vote on pardoning Assange and the mental gymnastics from far aggressives not to do it because they oppose Julian Assange.
They do.
And they do. For the wrong reasons.
They call him a rapist. They call him a liar, a rustigator.
The right wing calls them hackers, some of them. You know what I'm saying? The left wing calls them rapists and whatnot and stuff. And
the right calls him a traitor.
Yeah, it's terrible.
It's bad.
All he did was he did journalism. He did real journalism, and he's never had to retract a story from WikiLeaks right here. WikiLeaks right here. Never had to retract the story, and he brought people the truth. He's so important. We are all Julian Assange, ladies and gentlemen. We are all Julian Assange. Rokfin Czar also says AOC said we have to stop using polite language, and when Jimmy Dore used impolite language, she said he was committing violence.
Exactly.
We talked about it. Anything else, my friend? All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it for today. It was a long show. Thank you for hanging with us. We'll be back mañana, right?
No, Wednesday.
Wednesday?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Wednesday. I thought it was Wednesday today. That's how bad I am in the times and stuff like that. Thank you to all the Patreons out there. We got a lot of them. It's awesome that you guys give us that love. Everybody who's left any dollars and cents on the PayPal, you are loved and not forgotten. All the people today with the Super Rays, everybody like Rokfin Czar, Trey Wright, Audie, Cultist Demon, Embold Fateh, Hunter Carranza, Bulls on Parade, Roar Media, OG North American Ape. You guys were great. David Guerrera. And Muhammad Afzal, who got in early today, usually shows up late, but we appreciate him getting the class on time. Thank you so much. You guys help us do what we're able to do. You saw the BLM 757 interview. If you haven't gone and seen it, go watch it. It's a very great interview. We're going to have the Reverend Annie Chambers one coming out soon. And then we also have an event coming on the 11th.
And 10th.
The 10th and the 11th. The 11th for sure is the day of protest, actually, in front of the CNN building. What time is it starting?
I think we said noon.
We'll solidify all the times. We'll get all the information out there and stuff like that. We have to double down, ladies and gentlemen, on fighting against censorship. Mm-hmm. You saw what happened in the halls of Congress. You see what's going on in Florida. You see what's going on in the UK. You see what's going on everywhere. If we don't fight for our voices, if we don't fight for transparency, it will be taken away from us. If you don't use it, you will lose it. And right now, they are censoring us like crazy. Yeah. So we implore you, come on out. We're having them all over the place. There'll be one in Seattle. There'll be one in D.C. There'll be one in California. We hear there's one in Denver popping up. That's Fuck Censorship, Action for Assange. We're looking to throw some anti-war movement into the whole thing, fam. Anything to say on that before we get going?
No, we'll just have more information as soon as possible, and we'll be able to dish it out so everybody can come and join us for those 2 events that we're doing here. We need all the support we can get because we cover a lot of things that other people don't cover. Like we're talking about the national security state. We're talking about these bills that are infringing on our civil liberties. A lot of YouTubers don't cover that, even some of the most popular ones. It's very wonky language. It's a lot of work to actually go through the Senate hearings like Pasta just did. It's tough. It's not always the sexiest topic when you're talking about censorship and all this stuff, but people need to understand it's completely related to everything else, and that's why we're doing this event, especially the panel that we're going to be having where people are going to talk about why Julian Assange, why you should pay attention to it as organizers, as journalists, as advocates, why it's so important and how it affects directly every issue you are trying to fight for. So
yep, and don't be fooled by all the guff when they say it's speech that you don't like, because if we don't fight for freedom of speech for those we despise, then we don't fight for freedom of speech at all. We don't believe in it at all.
At one point, we're going to be the ones that aren't popular.
Let's keep fighting. For Pasta Jardula,
Fiorella,
Johnny Sue on those 1s and 2s.
Convo out.
Bye, everybody.